All right, peeps. We are live. Oh, yeah. We are back. OBS is fixed, so I can stream on the YouTube now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're back. Joe Biden is president. What do you guys think? Make sure you drop a like when you get here. Make sure you're subscribed. But most importantly, hit that notification bell. As you guys very well know by this point, YouTube doesn't like the channels that kind of are really strong proponents of free speech. They kind of, as long as you're going along with the, you have your belief, they have theirs, and everything's fine. But if you're out there challenging it, challenging that norm, it's going to get you in trouble, and it got me in trouble. So I'm still demonetized here on YouTube, and with no end in sight. I haven't even been reviewed yet. It's been 5 months. The canned response from YouTube is, Travis, with the pandemic, our reviews are behind. Don't know what to tell you. We'll get to you. Hang in there. But a guy can only eat so much spaghetti. How y'all doing? Say hello when you get into the chat. But yeah, I thought we would pick Joe Biden as president as the topic today for the Pangburn Hangout. We've been doing these hangouts every day, essentially. Wednesday's typically our day off, but I wasn't online yesterday, so I thought I'd jump on today. What up, Alexander? What up? So I thought I'd jump on today. This is unannounced, but we are going to be live streaming on YouTube again. Serban Lacob says hello, and good topic, by the way. Yeah, so guys, no, your democracy is not crumbling. It's not. You lost, Timmy. You lost. Sometimes, and look, Donald, openly admits he's a sore loser. He's a really sore loser, and people thought he was kidding. But he wasn't kidding. He exhausted every possible conspiratorial angle or anything he could get his hands on to try and, prolong this or try to find some problem, give people, have a revote in some areas. Maybe he could do enough politics in between that time to garner a few more votes. Just find me a few thousand votes and your life will be terrific. It'll be the best life, plated in gold. Let me know what you guys think of Donald's run as president, and do you think he'll be back? I think Trump. We'll see. We'll see how things go with the Biden administration here, or the Harris administration, however you want to slice it. but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to see what Joe Biden can do. He kind of like Trump. He's a smart guy. I don't think he's a highly intelligent guy. But we'll see what happens. We got R Couture in the room with me. 94. How's it going?
What's up, man?
How's it going today?
Yeah, it seems like a regular day. It's like Joe Biden's in, like pretty much it's like, we've already had like an Obama presidency, so it's kind of going to be like very much of the same. So
yeah, so you anticipate just a lot more of the same, the radical extremists having the loudest voices, but the general population being like, guys, can we just fucking like get back to work?
like pretty much the come of it. Like Trump, he like rile people up. Like even on the other side, they kind of rile people up, but in a different way. But it's like here, it's kind of like nothing's really gonna happen. Like so, it's kind of like the corporation's pretty much just in charge. So yeah, I don't see much to. It's kind of like the usual right now, pretty much.
Yeah. Are you in the United States?
Yep.
Yeah.
Then Massachusetts.
What are your thoughts on kind of the general psychology of the country right now? I think in the just a little bit about what I think in the West, I think people are a lot closer than they imagine on policy and in politics in general, and
Yeah.
we tend to get really, really outraged, or at least the extreme sides of each political spectrum get really outraged over very minuscule things. What do you feel about that?
Exactly. Like, actually, like the thing is, it's not even based on like opinion. It's like based on fact too. That everyone, like if you even poll everyone, they pretty much agree on like so much things that it would like shock you like how much we agree on.
Yeah.
Like even I heard like a majority of Republicans like support Medicare for all. Like so it's like generally it's like there's so much overlap on policies, but people distract themselves by like the identity politics of it, of like left and right and liberal and whatever, and it's like they don't even realize that like we're having like a false debate when the real debate should be had is like the elite is like kind of walking out the door pretty much. Like that's what's happening. Like
Yeah.
it's like a distraction.
Although I think it's a bit of a um a bit of a platitude to kind of point at the elite and say, "Oh, it's the elite." I think there are a lot of elites doing a lot of good and doing a lot of positive things, right?
Yeah, I mean, a way I would think about it is like, I kind of want to phrase it. It's not like every person like that's like in the kind of elite category is bad, but it's generally like how the system is devised. Like, however, there's not really much you could point to like how it's devised. It's kind of just something that like decayed for years and years and years, and now got to this point. But now that like naturally, it's like naturally that's what's gonna happen. So it's kind of like taxes. It's like if we have like a shitty tax system where like someone really rich is paying like none in taxes, that's not necessarily the person's fault. That's like the system's fault for allowing it because taxation is involuntary.
Right, and I think blaming someone who's playing within the rules of the tax system is just dumb. I think what people have to do when it comes to taxes, if they don't like that, this particular billionaire is only paying this amount, they think it should be more, then start rallying for new policy, new law, and people be like, but that takes so much time. Well, it's better than sitting there in some on your armchair being like, yeah, well, he should be paying more. It's like, well, what do you want him to do? Voluntarily pay more? I mean, most of the billionaires are doing great things for their country with their wealth. So it's people just get so fucking cynical when it comes to that. It's like people who go after like Bezos and Elon Musk and they're like, no one should have that much wealth. It's like, go make your own fucking money. Like, go make your own fucking money. It's like, oh, well, I can't. It's like, well, don't get mad at them for making their own money. And then again, if you have a problem with how much wealth they have and you think that there should be, you can only have this much wealth and then the rest goes back to the poor, then fine and dandy. But you have to go about that in a democratic way. You're in a democracy. You have to, you have to propose new ideas and try to get them passed in law.
I never agree with like wealth caps and everything, like because it's like essentially like it's like if your portfolio is going up, there could be many reasons why that is, and like there could be arguably good being done if you're going from like one level to another, like let's say a couple 3 billion to like 10 billion. It's not like that incentive aspect like vanishes the second you hit $1 billion. So it's like as long as we have the right things in place beforehand, that's kind of that should be like the focus.
Yeah, and you
like,
don't, and I think our couture, and thanks for your adding to this conversation. But I think the main thing is you don't want Elon Musk to stop working. You don't want Jeff Bezos to stop working. Like, you don't want them to reach some level and be like, oh fuck, I have no incentive to do anything anymore. Sure, I think for the most part their moral foundations would kick in and say, I still want to do things because I think it's great for humanity and whatever. But But just don't. It's like capitalism is set up in a way to build these hierarchies, and generally, with these people that accumulate all of this wealth, they generally are the people we want to have all of that wealth. They're in that 1% of intellect in the public of like what you want. How's it going, Bruce and Grim?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. Did you watch the terrific inauguration?
No, I didn't even watch Trump's.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not.
I don't know what's the difference. What's I mean, it's like I guess some people like the kingship, but that when a king takes the throne, that happens as a serious momentous occasion,
right?
Because they've been endowed the throne long periods of time. They have such control. Like in the presidency, this should be boring and just normal stuff. Because it's the way system has been created, and this is what we're doing. And if you're championing your team on this, you're kind of in the wrong spot as far as getting things done, because the same problems people would have complained about with the last presidency will exist in the new if you continue in your team.
Place your hand on the Bible to overpromise and underdeliver. I swear.
Yeah, I hate how they desecrate Christianity that way. It's silliness.
Well, and they treat it like, necessarily everyone that gets into the presidency, is going to like take that seriously, right? Like, I don't think Donald Trump's really a Christian. I think a lot of people would agree with.
Well, I think some people are. You know what's interesting, man? I think people think they are. You know what I'm saying? Like they think they, in whatever flavor that is. Just because an ideology is used poorly doesn't mean the ideology itself doesn't have merits. And so, but I mean, they do. And also, like, there's a lot of people are sold that like this is their base, and their base needs these things, and that's part of their, Plus, it's culturally, American to be Christian at this. I mean, even at this point.
I think that there's another side to it too, which is validation. And so when you have there's two groups that manage the Catholic and Christian viewpoints in Washington, and that's their main goal. There's a Netflix special on it, and then there's that famous church that's right down the street from the Capitol. And if you're validated and in with those groups, then that's really what it's about. It's the culture, not really the practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's usually cultural.
Yeah, you ever seen on CNN like the gross fawning of Joe Biden? It's like they act like he's gonna be like the best president in history of the world or something. You ever see CNN
like right now?
No, in general. I think last night I saw like CNN's coverage. Like they're saying like all these like platitudes about Joe Biden, like as if he's gonna be like the best president or something ever.
Oh well, I think they're all just like trying to get clicks on the anti-Trump train. So like because it's not Trump, and also what's really bothersome, as far as I'm concerned, is the pursuit of Trump legally and to keep him in the news after this is over, because they want to continue the legal procedures of impeachment, like not just impeachment but also pursuing it in the courts. So like he's not going away, and the media wants that. It's good for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the most entertaining man on the planet, the most famous guy. They want. You're right. There is an incentive for those ratings, and the United States chief export is entertainment. So, all of us outside of the country are like, yeah, bring it on.
That's not our chief export. You know what our chief export actually is?
It's entertainment. I can guarantee
it's
you.
Not. No, the number one paid thing in America is not entertainment. It's ideas.
I thought it was petroleum oils that were processed and crude oils and cars.
Ideas are our number one export.
How is that quantified?
So companies come to us for new ways of doing things, and we get basically consulting groups and management groups, and then we have verticals that can actually execute what they're doing, right? So let's say I have a toy company or whatever, but those companies approach us and spend the most money for our R&D.
I see what you're saying. I mean,
I'm gonna just fact check all this right now.
Yeah.
How much money do they spend? Because I mean, I know that the oil was somewhere in crude was like $65 billion.
Well, we import most of our oil from Canada.
No, I'm not talking about the difference. I'm talking about our export. 65 billion last year, I'm pretty sure, was how much we exported. And I think cars were somewhere close to that because we still make quite a bit of cars here.
Yeah.
we make
But I mean, how do you get the R&D cost calculation?
So there was a study done basically by how world business was shifting. So they were talking about the import export of our trade system, right? It's like Trump came into power. And so what I did is I watched this documentary about these business basically accolades about where America was headed, and I can try to find out what it was called, but it was circling around like toy manufacturers, right? Like people that these Chinese and Indian toy manufacturers, and some in the Japanese region too. And the amount of money that they condition for Americans, and the amount of money that they condition for like the software needed to run these toys, and so on, like they all come to America for R&D. So this billionaire that owns like the number one toy company in the world, he says America's number one export has always been the R&D, and it's always been the ideas and everything that they make. And they just showed like how we're evolving more towards that as automation is taking up over everything else, is that there will be this R&D and idea base that America has now adopted to become basically that's where we get most of our money. It's interesting. And I was like, I never fucking knew. That's such a
what I would say is what needs to be utilized as a UBI for Americans. I don't think that Americans' capital, intellectual capital, is well dispersed back to the people. Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these internet companies that are being used around the world are not being taxed on income from around the world.
They are actually. So this year,
not through Ireland.
I know, but this year is the year that countries are basically telling people like Google and stuff like that, you can't operate in this country without a tax. France was one of the first ones that did that, and Google is paying them a tax now to operate in their country.
No, yes, that is happening. But what I'm saying is that Google does not have to pay America taxes on money that comes in from other countries.
Hey, Desired, can you turn your mic down? It's like,
is it blaring?
Yeah,
it's really loud.
Oh wow. I don't even know how that happened. I can work on that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't know about that, because if it lands on our shores, whether it's through foreign or domestic, then they can pay less tax, right? So let's say it's a domestic wire fee, then they'll pay 5%. So it's hard to say as compared to the typical. I think it's like 10 to 15, sometimes 20, depending on what it is. So I don't know about that, but anyway, moving back to topic, I heard a great argument the other day of like, because I was talking about it, and they were like, well, you know,
okay, so
we
the
don't
Ireland as a tax haven, BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, are tools giving some foreign corporates effective tax rates of 0 to 2.5% on global profits rerouted to Ireland via their tax treaty network.
Okay, so it's a tax
all
haven.
the money that Google makes outside of the U.S., all of that goes to Ireland and has a 0% to 2.5% tax rate. And then Google has access to that money without being taxed, because it's an internal cash trade at that point. It moving to America would not be taxed. So you get money from England to Ireland, then into America without taxes being paid on it.
I don't have a problem with that. If you want to find a tax haven and create a company in that tax haven,
no, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not okay with the government allowing tax havens to exist.
Well, we have no choice.
Yes, we do. We're the voters. We can say, I don't like that.
But so Trump had a choice to do that based on incoming funds, right? And typical is 5% unless you're Google and you found a way to get down to 0. But so as we were trying to form a company, as well as Trump was coming into power, we didn't know how he was going to mess with that international taxation, because it could have gone up to 15%. And so we had to realize where to place a company that we were trying to form, and so
all of that is great.
Google found a better way. They did it through Ireland, and it's up to the president to decide, whether they're gonna impose that international tax to go up, and they can go, all incoming monies that come from international funds have to be taxed at a certain rate, and it depends. But I'm okay with that, whether they decide that or not, because there's so much to unfold there of why we would even do that, where we do that. We're taking in money, it's being spent in America. That should make us happy all alone as well. Like, we just took a bunch of money from the world, put it into America, and spent it on American things. Like, that's
but we aren't putting it into America. We're putting it into Google. That's it.
Yeah,
Google just gets it and then gets to use that money to lobby special interests. So Google gets to run things, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that money is not put into the American.
Anyway, I had another thought process based off Pangburn's original comment. And it was about how our system isn't perfect because the people that we have elected, it gets kind of skewed, right? So if you have thousands of people nominate somebody, then that somebody has 1,000 viewpoints to then kind of sum up into their viewpoint, and it's not quite the perfect system. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, but we don't have a better system. But all these studies are showing how it's still got that flaw and that inconsistency where it's like it's kind of democratic, but not it can be better. And I agree that it can be better, but it is an interesting thought that maybe there's a better democracy out there that.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, get rid of the lobbying.
So there isn't a better democracy out there, because as long as you have people in control of votership and representation, there's no way to totally remove all of those sorts of interests. I mean, that's the nature of it. I mean, as a side note, Google has like 10 billion in investment of this last year in real estate, and their entire portfolio of dollars is being used to invest millions and millions, up to billions now this year, in like 15,000 homes, 20,000 homes in Mountain View. Like, they're all over the place invested with that dollars. It's not necessarily just their own company that's sitting on cash. The only people doing that are Apple, actually. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Pangburn.
Yeah, no, I was just going to, I wanted to bring up this export thing again. Grim, what did you think was the chief export?
We said R&D.
R&D ideas, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't find anywhere where that's quantified. And just in comparison, like machinery exports for 2019 were 205 billion, which is rated number 1 on this export list for kind of material. But like entertainment was over 700 billion in 2019.
Yeah, that's intellectual property. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah,
well, entertainment is both and, like, that's that's why, like, in most economists, when they're looking at the United States, are going to say that, entertainment is the chief export. Like because it's like, it's literally the other stuff outside of entertainment. Like, I don't know where, Grim, you're seeing that being quantified.
Yeah, it was an interesting analysis. I think it just had to do with basically how the money was moving out of America during this new period of entering into 2020.
Right.
And I saw this in the beginning of the year.
Because you're basically talking about patents, right? Like when we patent an idea.
No, because
it's more like service.
It's more of a service. It is. It's an R&D.
More like services are the number one export.
Let me see.
Like to go in and find the problem with a business, and that is your business. I, from America, go to China to help a grocery store chain work on their logistics issues. So I get paid to come work on their issues and then go back.
But services.
So here's what I'll say. I'll give you this, Pangburn, is that I'm not 100% certain, and entertainment or oil could very well be right now the number one, quantitative way to say this is our number one export. What I'm hearing from professionals, though, and especially on the World Bank platforms, is that R&D and ideas are going to be what is the most costly thing at all. You have all this data, or you have all this understanding, and it's the teams that are doing something with that are making the most money and forwarding themselves.
Oh, definitely. I think that argument you just made, 100%.
So that's the mentality that these financial sectors are starting to look at, as automation is taking care of the rest. I don't think automation will so much do art, but automation is kind of lowering that cost and that price for a lot of other shit, where it just comes down to like, we need human capital with human ideas. That will never be fucking replaced.
Can you actually, you just brought up art and machines. This has been something I've been thinking about a lot just while writing my book and about the pleasure drive. What is it going to feel like when machines are creating art? Because we already get it, but I'm talking about art like, we have some AI systems like primitive AI systems that are building paintings and things like that. But I guess I'm talking on the scale of full narratives and full movies.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, full scale. You would appreciate the creator, not the machine itself. I think, as you would say, hey, this machine just created this movie with deep fake and all that kind of shit, and it looks like a normal movie, but that was made by a machine. Right. Well, let's give praise to the dude that made that machine. So
that becomes an interesting thing.
Here's what I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
Then give credit to the father and mother, and not the
kid.
No.
Here's the thing that seems interesting to me is you are correct. The one thing that I was chewing on, because we talked about this a while ago, I've chewed on this a little bit. I think people will give credit to society as a whole for being the creators of the machines, and so they'll sit back and bask in. Look at what we did. Now, I do think there's a fallout from that as far as like individual contributions concerned and all of those sorts of things. But there will be some pride in the creation of the culture. It's the same thing that people did when we landed on the moon, if you believe that. We landed on the moon, and it's sort of like we all did it, which is, in my opinion, sort of silly, but that's what that does.
That's what it feels like.
And I see it somewhat similar. Yeah.
Just to clarify a little bit, what I'm talking about is once the machine becomes independent from its creator, and just like Desired brought up, thanking the mother and father for like the great work of Elon Musk or something like that. Like I'm talking about when that machine becomes even if it's a stationary and lives inside a box, like what level of worship. The same kind of worship we see towards artists. Mm-hmm. What will that worship look like? Like, will they put that machine on a stage somewhere, and will people come in large audiences to be in its presence?
No, why would you? You can talk directly to it.
Much like the religion, they'll praise the creator behind it.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's going to be a different situation where you can directly talk to it. There's no reason for you to go visit a box. Pangburn, you've put on how many things? I get to meet you. I've never left my garage.
No, I know that, but there's something.
There's no need to move.
Yeah, but
motion
dude,
is not needed
dude,
for ideas to spread,
dude.
and the ideas to be made.
No, dude, being in the presence, being inside the Colosseum in Rome is different.
Well, that's only special to humans. We only make that.
You don't
special.
know
That's
that.
Not actually
I
special.
think when we actually solve. What I think is which I think is the key problem, which I argue in my first book, this desire to be loved, this desire to be wanted, is going to exist inside these earlier primitive
yes, but
AI
they're
systems.
not going to. They may not find the same love of needing to stand in front of something to feel something.
Maybe not.
That's purely a human thing that only.
Well, don't say it's purely. Don't say it's purely a human thing. Like because you're committing. Yeah. Okay. So
I said so far.
Sure.
Well, that we know of.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you that. But as far as we know, the only place that meaning exists is in human conversation.
No way, man. No way. I can quantify meaning within.
No, you're labeling something as meaningful to you.
Just wait.
But that event doesn't necessarily.
You didn't let me finish.
Well, I wanted to make sure you weren't going to say what I already understood.
No, I wasn't.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying. There are other forms of meaning. A mother, a black bear, looking at her cubs running along and feeling some pride to protect them.
Do you know that bear's feeling pride?
I would say pleasure. I would say experience. Just wait. I would say pleasure. In seeing the young grow up and this drive to want to carry them to fruition, carry them or continuing to help them be well.
Right, that's how humans have succeeded, right? But that's only us seeing what looks like caring and meaning to us and saying that it is. We can't definitively say that the bear actually has meaning in its young until we can communicate with them in some way and find out if what they are describing as their feelings matches what is ours. But you're only applying human emotion to animals.
I'm talking about emotion in general. The same thing, like how Coco the gorilla really loved being around Robin Williams in a demonstrable way. The connection there was not the same as the connection Coco had, and this is measurable, the connection Coco had with other people. So there are ways to quantify how other animals interact with each other in ways that we can identify with. And I don't think that's...
Would you say that pleasure is meaning then? Can you derive pleasure without meaning?
Can you derive pleasure without meaning? Yeah. Well, I think pleasure is the fundamental feedback source that's pushing us forward. I don't want to get too. I don't want to get.
Coco be searching for that pleasure without the meaning attached to it?
Well, it's a good question, because we would have to have a way.
Then is that you assessing their emotions with human as
you're getting to the meaning of life, and it's going to get there.
Yeah. Well, we would have to have a way to understand that, and like we can run. I mean, lots of tests have been run to say, like, oh, Coco, what do you need right now? What are you feeling? Tell us on the keyboard. Tell us on the in your paintings. Tell us in these ways that you can.
Agreed.
We've been trying to communicate with animals in this way.
Is it also true that humans can have a professional level conversation about a certain topic and be using the same words and be talking past each other?
Yeah, it can happen, but
if humans who speak the same language and are trying to communicate the same concepts can use the same words and talk past each other, is it possible that what you're trying to assess out of the animals,
I'm not interested in what's possible.
You,
I'm interested in what's plausible.
I know, and I'm saying that you're assessing that they have meaning without assessing every chance. You're letting it go. You're saying that no, they have meaning because I see meaning.
No,
you're just pointing at it.
I didn't say that.
And behaviors.
Go back in the.
You said it's demonstrable. We can see it.
No, we can see demonstrations.
If I could moderate desire, the point is that whether you get it right or wrong, meaning is still prevalent in the other animal.
Yeah, right. Like just because red that I see doesn't match the red that you see, it's not red when we both point at it.
Well, you're presuming that red exists in that other one's world.
No. Well, no, we both call it red. Like Coco watched the movie and cried and said, "This movie makes me sad."
Yeah, so not pleasure. Right? You said you could have pleasure and not have meaning to it. You could have meaning.
I didn't say that.
Correct?
You said
I
that.
asked I said, "Can you have meaning without pleasure?" And you said yes. Did I misunderstand what you were saying?
Can you have? No, you said
pleasure
can you have
without
pleasure
meaning.
Without meaning? So you just switched.
Can you have pleasure? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Can you have pleasure without meaning?
Yeah, and I was going on to say that I think the way our the feedback system of life that's going on in every single living thing is based on just the pursuit of pleasure without anything else attached to
no
that.
Meaning.
So the meaning comes from a reflection on what's happening.
Okay. So, with that being said, is it possible that Coco could feel for pleasure and feel for not pleasure without having any concept or idea or
anything's possible
attached to it?
Anything's possible. I don't care about what's possible.
You're making a truth claim that they do without being and it's not provable at this point.
Well, it does. The thing
we can't communicate.
It's most probable.
Yeah, so we're like, trying to come up with plausible
that something's true.
Desired, you're taking us down a tunnel here that's just not on topic. I want to get us back.
It sounds non-skeptical to make a truth claim and not question it.
No one did that, and
you said that they have meaning. Prove it. You said animals engage with meaning.
Yes, and I gave the example of Robin Williams and the art.
Right, and I gave the counterpoint that you can do actions that resemble what we call meaning without attaching meaning to them, and you agree that it's possible for actions to be had without meaning.
Yes, it is.
Therefore, you have a wide open
possible.
hole in your opinion.
No, it is possible, but I'm interested in what's plausible, and these studies on animals like Coco the gorilla have shown that there are different emotional states and different emotional reactions to different things, and from that we can say, oh, okay, what does Robin Williams typically mean to Coco? And then the scientist, the observer, will say, well, Robin Williams brings a feeling of joy to Coco, a feeling of togetherness, like all of these things that are observed and attempts to quantify. So that's what's going on. I don't know where the disconnect is.
He's broaching on the problem of other minds. That's what I think is happening.
Desire, do you think Coco could use proper sign language to convey how Coco felt about certain things, like her cat, for instance?
Right, exactly. Yeah,
I believe that Coco could present what two people agreed to use to communicate in order for her to try to draw her mind picture on ours.
Right.
We do not know actually what that mind picture is. We can only guess what is close.
So if you think that is true, then the same thing is true for you and me and everybody else that was also taught the same methods.
Yes, I agree. And we talk past each other and don't understand each other.
Right.
And yet you're claiming to have true understanding of what her emotions meant.
So the meaning for me is the meaning.
No, I'm not. Some of the scientists are building models based on their observations.
Right. So whether we understand 100% like what you mean when you say I like pizza, I could take that in a lot of different directions. The same way I like pizza, doesn't matter. Meaning is still behind it. We still qualify that as meaning, whether we know really the actual truth of how you truly fucking feel about pizza. That's so subjective. I could never honestly know.
Right.
But you're still talking about how one direction or not. We haven't even gotten whether we can make that assessment or can't.
Yeah, when Coco communicates the same way, like I'm sad because my cat died, we know there's meaning there. Whether we really understand what they feel about the cat and things like that, the meaning is still there before you dive into...
Well, yes, the meaning is in the words that come to you because that's been agreed upon. That's the external world.
That's how we communicate.
The forward.
So I don't know.
And we can still talk past each other using identical words.
Words are after.
And identical... Yes.
I don't
That's where the meaning lies. The meaning doesn't lie in the mind of the animal. The meaning lies in the language with which we communicate with the animal. Neither do you. So don't claim that it is.
I didn't.
Yes, you did. You said they have meaning. You can't claim that they have meaning.
I disagree.
No, you claim that the words have meaning.
Hey, Desire, just let Grim come in.
Before you have words, you have a certain amount of time where your brain is actually developing these emotions, right, into that thought, into the words. So it's long before words are ever described. I think meaning is very subjective, but on Pangburn's level, it has to do with emotion and pleasure and many other things that could be deterministic, honestly.
Yeah. So let's get back. Dal, what do you think of Biden finally taking seat here?
I'm mostly just hoping that we can all stay calm as a country for the next few months until hopefully things start to calm down. But from the people I've been talking to that are in areas that are mostly Trump supporters, they seem a little bit frightened. So I don't know.
The Trump supporters seem frightened?
No, the they're actually the Biden supporters that I talked to recently that are living amongst a bunch of Trump supporters. So take it with a grain of salt. But
yeah,
there's no evidence to prove that. Quite the opposite, actually. There is evidence, on the other hand, if you have a Trump flag or any sort of Trump support, that you're up for at least a knock-in ring or a flaming bag of shit on your porch.
I think what Dal was saying is that it, just in his small,
Yeah, I know. I hear this too. I hear this all the time. I find it interesting that people say that with little evidence.
Well, I think
the people that are fighting whatever happened in the U.S. Capitol, well, they're attacking the people in the power that be, not the individuals that are espousing Biden. The other way around is very much the case. I've been beaten up for wearing a MAGA hat in Seattle as an experiment. And that was in 2016. I wasn't beaten up. Let's be honest. No one can kick the shit out of me unless they're huge. But these people were little kids. But they tried. That happens to everyone. I've never, ever heard of anyone with a Biden hat or shirt being beaten on. And if you could provide evidence, I'd be curious at all. That's insane.
Very true. I don't think these people were afraid for their own safety. They were afraid for the stability of the United States as a whole.
Oh, so they're actually that's a counter narrative, because would they have been like anti-Trump during the stability? They would have said he's ruining stability, and now Biden comes in and it just makes it worse. Is they're saying? Well, that would be a hot take.
I think they're still saying Trump called for violence. That's a thing I hear a lot. Him being taken out of power, a lot of people are angry, and that's why the invasion at the Capitol happened. A lot of people are talking about how they want to overthrow Biden and not allow it to go through.
They heard that during the Obama presidency as well. It's all just mostly that's not going to happen.
At the end of the day, we're not going to judge this man right now, but we'll judge him by the trials and tribulations that befallen him in the next 4 years. And I think, as we can clearly see, is that through this COVID pandemic and through these national crises that we tend to have, we had a situation where the country was more divided than ever on what we needed to stand for, rather than united when things like the Iraq War or Desert War, many other trials and tribulations that our country has gone through. And I think that should be more apparent about, let's see what happens in the next 4 years. Did we come out more united, or are we still as divided as we are? Because when the next tragedy befalls on us, you can definitely see exactly where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
What's your biggest fear with the Biden administration?
I think I'm worried about two major things: the social normative nature of things like trans individuals being forced upon children, or at least nerfing parents' ability to tell their children they can't involve themselves in that sort of thing, and gun buyback or gun restriction. Those two are the large ones that bother me. The third one is getting involved in some place like Yemen again or something like that. But the first two are more important and immediate.
I see a war with China. That's what I see. They need to de-escalate. They need to de-escalate with China, and I think they have a few other countries that we need to de-escalate with immediately. If we don't de-escalate those, then we're going to have a big fucking problem pretty quick.
Why do you think war with China, Grim?
Because right now the stage is that we're kind of getting powers to be rally around us, getting aside, which is a fuck China situation. They need to get their act together. And unfortunately, China isn't like, okay, well, you have more people on your side, we'll start adhering to your worldview. They're very staunch in what they are going to do and not let any country tell them otherwise. And it's with the Uyghurs happening, with Hong Kong happening, with the trade happening, it's getting more and more prevalent. They are trying to create stronger ties with Russia as well. And you have these dictatorships that are newly formed, and we all kind of know where this heads down that path. So for me, they've been talking about, some of my contacts in Washington have been talking about, he needs to get in de-escalating with China immediately. That's like day one for him.
The thing that bothers me is the Hong Kong scenario, for sure. We're going to be, We have a moral obligation to support Hong Kong and their efforts, and that's not the popular sentiment among establishment for certain. And that bothers me. I think you have to consider what we're basically saying is, are we going to consider the war with China or the freedom, autonomy of Hong Kong? And we're going to choose. In your case, you're saying we should de-escalate and at least capitulate to China as opposed to supporting Hong Kong. And I would say morally, I want to support Hong Kong. Politically, I understand the de-escalation measures, but I can't sit idly by and see Hong Kong continue in that world.
Agreed. But
so, what's and I think we need to consider that when we're talking about de-escalation in one way and escalation in another. We'd be morally obliged to the situation in North Korea and Hong Kong.
Are we the world police, though?
No, we're not the world police, but we are world economic leader. There's a moral obligation to do what's right.
No.
Okay.
What's right is not overextending ourselves. And
I'm not overextending myself. I'm saying that China and everyone else, please stop doing this to Hong Kong. And
no, we can't start another thing, especially with someone who can roll over us just with people. China can win the war of attrition easily. They have us handcuffed.
I disagree with that as well, but sure.
It would need massive attacks that shouldn't be utilized.
Doing what's morally right is not easy. Just because China's large doesn't mean that we should
said that about
roll
Iraq
over.
Too.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I agree. It'd be nice if we could do that for everything. But we need
if we're talking about it being an issue at all,
we can't
otherwise
even take care of ourselves.
Well, that's not true.
Yeah, why?
Just because how are we not taking care of ourselves? Because what? We have problems like everyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to hear Desired's qualifier.
The United States is the best place to live in the world right now, for the most part.
Canada, baby.
No, your weather's terrible. Your weather's terrible.
We got good weather. Some places.
But in one province, maybe.
Hold on. Bruce, we're biased. Let's just be admitted to that.
Yeah, I know we are, of course. Of course we are. I think the Canadians and Alberta and I would get along real well.
I think you would love Alberta, honestly.
It's too cold, dude, but I would like to go.
It's fucking
I like
cold.
the people in BC too, but I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
Yeah, BC is mini America. That's what that place is.
But why does Desire think that we can't take care of ourselves?
Yeah,
it's a localized view or in the world stage? Because I would say in the world stage we're in great shape. What do you mean?
Yeah.
On the world stage, there's many ways to prosperity. China is one where they came from a land of warring nation, which they understood that unity was the best way to move forward. We came from a state of freedom, but doesn't mean that which way is the right way to live. We just have to do it in a very dignified way where we believe equality is what needs to happen, right? And I don't think it's our right to step in and say, well, you guys can't take back over Hong Kong because, fucking England gave it back to you. Like, that's such a political move that's honestly none of our fucking business.
Well, it depends on what you consider our business, because we are involved in a number of treaties and with large organizations around the world, the UN, the NATO as well, so we could pull out of those and have no culpability. We could not do business there. We could not give them most favored. You can't give them most favored nation status, dude.
Bring some jobs back to America, maybe.
Yeah, no. Our treaty has nothing to do with the fact that China has a right to take back over Hong Kong. If we had a treaty that somewhere in the wording said, by the way, when this happens, which we all knew it was going to happen, it had a timeline.
Yeah.
Then we could have acted by it. But to have a surprise on this of now Hong Kong wants to be free, doesn't want to go back to China.
Okay, so then we accept refugees from Hong Kong?
That has nothing to do with our treaties. Nothing to do with us.
What I'm saying is, if we accept refugees, we are currently culpable for whatever. We are automatically putting ourselves in the way if we do that.
No, if there's human right violations, that's one thing.
There are, though. That's what I'm saying.
I get that.
Okay, well then we have to. There's a little bit of an issue here. It's not so black and white.
No, to me it is black
There's
and
also a
white.
bunch of human rights violations going on in South Africa. You want to go
Yeah,
in those
to me it
countries?
is black.
Yes, there are some issues there
Yeah.
we should be addressing. Yes, for sure.
Agreed. So where do we draw the line, and at what point do we stop attacking countries?
I don't know, man. It's a hard situation to be in, but
exactly.
like if people are,
So,
we can't sit idly by.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
When we aren't the top in the world for education or production or anything else anymore, we should come home and shore up ourselves. We should our country, but we are way overextended right now.
We've always been overextended. That's part of our nature.
Yeah, point is that if there's inequalities in China, whether on a Hong Kong stage, like with the protesters, or there's Uyghurs being in camps, we have ways of shaming that country without having to physically go in there and make them change their practices, which is not our choice, which is not how we should be doing things. But we have ways of shaming them and not doing business with them.
Yeah, that's the same thing as waging war.
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's the same thing. That's what I'm talking about too. I'm not even talking about boots on the ground. I'm talking about that stuff.
Then we are
capitalist, the true American view.
All right.
To not allow prejudice and beating people down that can't support themselves would not be to economically support the country that beats and keeps its people down.
That's far worse than even occupancy at the border.
So that we can spend more, so we can buy more stuff cheaper.
Yeah. All right, so I'll let someone else get words in on this. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump just quickly to Zombie Killichick. Are you able to chat today?
Hey.
A little. I'm kind of in the middle of work, but I'm listening.
Of course.
What's up?
So, what do you think? Biden's in office now. What do you think of the general attitude of the country?
I mean, I've just pretty much been in Portland and a little bit in Florida in the last few months. So
yeah,
I think at least on the West Coast side, it's our rioting will continue. It's still continuing, even though it's not in mainstream media much. So we're having daily, just like destruction. And
who's out there?
What was that?
Who's out there doing it?
People that prescribe to Antifa.
Okay, yeah.
Goddamn Antifa.
Well, I mean, you can make a meme of it and say it like that, but it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we have a really large Antifa and very organized and older chapter here, Rose City Antifa. They make no qualms about it. Originally when they started, with the Black Lives Matter movement, that's, they were a lot mellower, kind of just riding on the shirt tails of that movement. They're going to switch it up to anything they can use to support their narrative, which is, do away with government.
Right.
So I don't think it's gonna settle down here. And I think we need to look at isolated pockets across the U.S. It's going to be different everywhere we're at. I am sick of very extremist views on either side.
Yeah, it doesn't represent the general public, and that's a problem. People start believing that it does, and it unfortunately does. A lot of these fringe people who are sitting on the line start speaking in social extremist language on social media, and you're just like, dude, where are you getting this crap? Oh, well, that's what this person said. It's like, well, okay, but you don't have to be engaging in that way with people. It's like, people are just people. Stop, you don't have to be so extreme about it.
Yeah, I'm a little irritated with the whole everything that happened in DC the other week, mainly because I feel like it was predictable and preventable.
Yeah.
And a direct result of a small group of people in I don't know how many millions were at at that march. No different than Antifa on BLM's tails early on in the movement with the George Floyd, murder, homicide, killing, whatever you want to call it. And I'm picking my words carefully only because I know it inflames a lot of people, but like, I don't know how many people, 1,000 people were in the middle of that, that actually breached the Capitol. Again, another very small fringe group that is causing a ruckus. But, one of their things is they were also beating up mainstream media and destroying their equipment, which I found very intriguing.
I thought about this a lot, and I guess the best way I can put it is I'm proud to be in a country that people can have the ideas like Antifa. I'm sad to live in a country that people have the actions like Antifa.
Well, exactly. I agree, because I feel like that far right was very hypocritical in what they did. And I think that was their message. They were sick of seeing what was happening across the country for the last, since late May, early June, and were kind of thumbing their nose, and saying, well, they've gotten away with it for however long. None of these district attorneys are arresting them. Let's make a big message. We're going to do the same. Yeah, and I don't think that's right. But
yeah, I think a lot of the right voting constituency was so pissed at those people that did that. It's just engaging in the same crap that you've been complaining about, the social extremist crap that you've been complaining about on social media. And then we're going to take the Capitol. It's like, this is the pussification that you hate on the extreme left, and you're engaging in it. You are Chief Pussy now. How does it feel?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Anyway,
I was going to say, it feels good. I've never had power before.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of a funny thing. What is power? I feel like I have power within my own life, and I'm pretty calm about it. If I were to go and do that, do I think I would have power? No, that's just false. They had no power. They were just being disruptive and destructive, and they freaking people died. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
There you go, Pangburn. That's your number one chief export right there. Power.
The power. I just think of Jafar when he finally becomes a genie. The power.
The power of DARPA compels you.
The power of Christ compels you.
Woman, 1984. And me and the wife looked at each other. I don't know if anybody see that, but there's this guy trying to cue power, and me and my wife look at each other and go, all the power in the world. Teeny, teeny, teeny lamb.
Yep.
Nice.
That's what it does, man. Power restricts you. And I think, what's interesting is when I find out the people that I want to be in power, and the key thing that attracts me to them is that they fucking hate it, because power only works for those that is thrust upon them, not those that wish it. And usually the people that have power that's thrust upon them are the ones that do the correct things with it, because they want to get rid of it as soon as possible.
That's an interesting concept. Have you read the papers between Adams and the letters?
The Federalist Papers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that right there just reinforces what you said.
Right, but then what happened? Washington stepped down and proved them wrong.
Well, Adams would be the embodiment of what you're talking about. Adams was hated because he hated power. That's why he really only did one term. But every time he made a decision, he did what he thought was right. and really didn't run for a solid reelection, because he just wanted to be done with it.
They wanted him to be president for life. It was crazy.
Adams?
No, basically when Washington was leaving, they wanted him to continue the process until he found an adequate protege, predecessor.
I think that they were actually talking about him becoming a king. Also,
so actually Adams, so Adams was John Adams, right, was actually the one who said the president wasn't a glorified title enough. And so he would always allude to, him and Alexander Hamilton, the Whig Party, would always allude to like a king type of status, which was not helpful. And I'm not yes, George Washington did what he did, but Graham, what I'm also trying to say is Adams actually represents more of what you just talked about, because yes, he did the presidency and he hated it. That's another reason why he wasn't very successful with going about a second term. He wanted to be done with it.
I don't know much about Adams. I knew Madison was kind of a different point of view, where he felt like, I think he felt more that the government had a lot more responsibility than what they were talking about.
Okay, so are we talking the Federalist Papers here, or are we talking presidents?
Federalist.
I think we're talking two different things. I'm actually talking about John Adams as a president. John Adams didn't write the Federalist Papers.
I was talking about the two letters between the two presidents back and forth after they were out of office, where they were mainly just getting to know each other and talking about like why it was pretty much so terrible to be president.
That was probably between Jefferson and Adams.
Yeah.
I think those were the two that would, I'm speculating here, but I think those were the two that would actually have the friendship to write that way.
And I think they wrote until they were very old in life.
They wrote almost to the day they died. They were lifelong friends to the point where they almost died. I think at almost the exact same time.
Oh, you're right. I thought Adams was part of the Federalist Papers. It's John Jay, Hamilton.
John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison.
Yeah.
And then the Anti-Federalist Papers too. You have a few other things. Pretty good. Adams was crucial. Matter of fact, the relationship between Adams and Jefferson is quite interesting because they really are the foundations of our tension between strong and weak government, or I don't want to say weak, but a central government versus the individual right, and what that spectrum looks like. Because Jefferson was very state and individual driven, while Adams said you needed a strong central government to effectively manage the evils of man.
Yeah, that's the point. I think the most powerful person in developing our nation is rarely ever spoke about, and that's Thomas Paine.
Yeah, common sense was definitely his right, and his other writings were definitely important.
I think that started everything. That's Locke too. I think he was such a good counsel for what we had. I know that we went to a lot of places to figure it out, and especially here on the shores, because a lot of Thomas Paine's talks and speeches were in France. But it was just amazing just to see that kind of mentality at that time, and it's just such forethought. You know what I'm saying? So all men are created equal, but yet we have slavery. To just say shit like that. You would be.
His idea wasn't exactly new. Locke shared that idea as well, for the most part. Sharing the divine nature, or in this case, the divine nature of man is the idea that all men are that way. Locke shared that.
But then
I think you have a natural revelation or a natural evolution between Locke to Paine, and then I would say, yes, influential for the American Revolution, but also influential to the French Revolution as well. I see what you mean. Thomas Paine's a very influential character.
Yeah, and I think the ideas were around. I think the idea and the understanding has always been around, and there has been free states out there where there wasn't slavery. But I just think to constitute that into a new government, like that took a lot of fucking balls. It just took a lot of balls. And
Well,
that's
slavery
cool about it.
slavery in this case, in the American experiment was part of the natural. I don't want to say natural, but just it was part of the economic systems of up to like millennia old.
Yeah, it's serfdom. That's what it was.
Serfdom, slavery, any way you want to kind of fracture that, the idea that another man is subjected to another man or something like that, like that dominance type of mentality. I think slavery was some level the first economic system, and then when capitalism came around in about the same time, right? I think that combined Locke and Paine and a few other people combined with Adam Smith theory of moral sentiment, which is actually published about the same time as Paine, and Wealth of Nations came out, kind of start to begin to see the shift that capitalism is a better system comparatively to slavery, and that there's better value, which then enables value of the individual.
Well, let's be honest. It was more natural, right? So when we wanted to mimic the marketplace and have less government interference, we came up with capitalism. Like it was more of a natural coming about. Where I have a feeling that capitalism was the standard. It was deviated once government got control of an economic system. And now, it's kind of come back full circle to where now we have an open free market. Yes, there's regulation. Don't get me wrong. We need that. It is needed, but not in the way that governments were handling it before. They just kind of tend to fuck it up the moment that they get in the way of that stuff. It's the equivalent of putting a person who wants to, I don't know how to create the perfect analogy, but it to me, it's like having somebody who's really good, a race car driver trying to drive a shipping truck across the country. Like, yeah, they got some skill in it, but you need to let the truck driver drive. Like, you need to let business lead.
Sure.
Hey, Mace,
Things you said, but anyway.
how's it going today?
This is the worst analogy.
You're good.
How's it going for you?
Going good. What are your takes? Biden's in the office. Are we worried about any domestic terrorism or anything like that? What do you think?
A boot.
I personally wouldn't have voted for him. I don't live in the US though, so I'm not worried about any terrorism.
But don't you have any kind of moral wish that there is no terrorism?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know there was a risk of terrorism.
Well,
is there?
I mean, and this will be kind of a question for everyone who lives in the United States. Do you think that the extremist sides of the political spectrum are boiling hot enough for one of these hotheads, regardless of what side they are on, to go and run people over or to shoot up a building? Or what do you guys I always, when I see this kind of the level of social extremism that I see in the United States, and again, it's of a small portions of the population, but it just takes one lunatic, right?
Will it hit the news? I don't know, maybe, but yes, obviously.
Is the worry that a Trump supporter will try to assassinate Biden or something?
Well, I mean, even just making a political statement, right? A lunatic is gonna. Someone might feel, okay, I'm in a pandemic here. It's like I was thinking of committing suicide anyway. Here's a way to make a political statement before I go. Has anyone thought of this?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure there's people out there that are.
I mean,
an attempt right now.
I'm I'm of the opinion that the first attack has already happened. I mean, on the 6th,
mean, there's been a series of attacks.
There was an attempt on federal buildings, like, so it's like already started. We're looking for, is there going to be retribution? And
again,
I don't know.
I guess the question here is, let's take a moment to define terrorism, because at some level, the reason why I take this position is, yes, the events of January 6th can be counted as seditious insurrection act. Maybe terrorists to a point, yes. But what I also point out is, we have other versions of this, like at the local level, like the Antifa movement is an example. BLM in some regards, some of the bad actors.
Yeah.
And then what I would say, and what I would hope is that, maybe we revisit George Washington's farewell address, since we've talked about our founding fathers. In that farewell address, about when he starts talking about political parties, he actually says something very profound in regards to use of political mobs to get your way, which I think is what the left has been doing for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And that right there doesn't lead long-term growth. It actually destroys the brotherhood of or the fabric of our society, which then makes us weaker. And so the best thing to do would political parties to denounce both sides equally, because it's an immediate transitory gain, not a long-term gain for the benefit of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a across-the-board denouncement of any political violence, and you weren't hearing it when Antifa and Black Lives Matter were going around burning. You were having people kneeling and supporting the movement. Like, it's just that's just psychotic. Like from like just me just looking at the United States, what's going on. Yeah. We have Portland burning, and some of these areas burning down, people getting killed, and then you have these immoral people kneeling down and, yeah, I support what they're trying to do. No, denounce the violence.
It's funny.
And this is why I say, it's so hypocritical in that it was so predictable and preventable.
Right.
Why?
I don't know. I guess I keep on coming to this conclusion, is that when I talk to people on both sides, it's just that, let's say the storming of the Capitol instance. Well, the small group that did this or whatever it may be. And I said that, to me, that doesn't upset me more than the fact that the majority who didn't stop them. Like, they just didn't say, hey, this isn't right. And if you have a group that is that patriotic and they're not going to let no man fucking stop them and what they're doing. Well, the moment that someone's fucking up your Capitol building, which your taxes paid for.
Make a citizen's arrest.
Make a fucking citizen's arrest. How about you get 20 of your boys instead of bitching about it?
This is what I'm talking about. Like, these fucking people, these patriots that during this storming the Capitol, standing by and just like with their phones looking around, taking pictures. Wow. Like, I thought you were this, but you're not. It's like, that's why Donald Trump, I think, came out and said, yeah, these are not the people that really do that I really want in my corner.
They're LARPers.
Yeah. Look at what that guy was dressed at. He thought he was so cool.
You're also running into things too, and I think we've talked about this too, Travis, in the past. Bystanding is now like it's just, I don't say it's ingrained, but it like people are more inclined to be bystanders than take the courageous step because of hiding behind keyboards or phones, or the idea that filming is more important than actually stepping in. The photo is more important than stepping in. So it's probably a courage issue in a lot of ways. And then on top of that, a mob is.
So
it's very difficult to break out of a mob.
To understand what we're talking about, you're saying, like, if there's one person that's there that's only there for filming out of 30, that person should say something to that mob and try to stop them?
No, Desired. I think you're missing the point.
That's why I'm asking. I want to make sure that I
You're
understand
good. You're good. What I'm saying is, on the whole, right, of those 30 people, right? Yes, there's that one person who's depressed, for example. Those 29 other people are more inclined to pull out their phone and film it, take pictures, or be in this bystanding way versus taking the courageous step to actually stop the solution, to stop the problem. Is that not a well-founded observation?
Yeah, I mean,
I
think there is a courage issue, but it's also
no. But
a
what
moral,
I'm saying is
a moral
during
issue
that
as well.
But during that situation, the 30 of them were the violent people. Like, they weren't filming. It was one person filming and 30 violent people that weren't.
Okay, but
right?
But I think we're still missing the thing here, because like now we're just breaking apart. So like, if let me get, I guess, more in tune with my analogy here. So you have 30 people. One of those persons is the media person on scene. Like, they're reporting the news like any other media person does. And you have, for the most part, let's say 20 actors in this environment who are protesting because they fundamentally believe their constitutional rights are violated, for example. Then let's say you have 5 other people who are agitators, and again, the extreme minority within the majority that are now going to be pushing for this. And then you have a cascading effect of the other 5 people who are kind of on the fence. And hopefully that adds up to 30, or give or take a little bit. But like, what I'm saying is, those 20 people are going to be more likely to film or stand outside and be bystanders versus taking a courageous action.
I don't know. I mean, do you step in and try to fight someone without training?
I don't think training is the issue.
No, I'm saying, as a bystander, at what point do you draw that line on where you should step in and where?
That's the question.
I'm not saying, I'm saying right now you can make that call, but in the moment it's very difficult to tell where the line is, right? Like,
being part of the mob,
gun out, point at head. I'm sure there would be someone there that would be like, "Hey, whoa!" before it happens. But I think I'm confused on that's terrifying being a part of it, right? And some of its survival is don't draw attention. And
well, I mean, you can take it that way as well. I mean, you can say that maybe people become the mob, but I think the point still remains the same. Like, every bystander is going to choose to interact with this environment however they choose. The question is, if they're seeing something that's unconstitutional, I'm particularly addressing the bystander, right? Just like you find in New York City, for example, people would, and I don't know if the rumor would, I guess this would be more of a rumor, but like, if someone's getting mugged, they'll walk right by you versus maybe calling the cops, or if they have confidence, right? And I'd say confidence because in their own abilities to fight the assailant, and they step in as the courageous person to make a citizen's arrest, or they grab a group of their buddies to make a citizen's arrest. Like, I don't know if that is that courage and that confidence is as prevalent as we would like it to be.
So is that complicitude? Complacency is acceptance?
No, because they're bystanders. To a point, no, they're bystanders.
Okay.
That's what makes it very difficult, because I mean, if you sit there and you watch a school fight, how many of us have been in school and we sit there and watch a school fight? We're all technically bystanders. Are we complicit now in the fact that we're watching the fight? Maybe. I want you punish every single student who sat there and watched fight, cheer it on or something like that, versus maybe promoting the student who tried to courageously stop the fight.
Yeah, I think we need more. You're talking about heroes.
I don't want to go the hero route. I'll just say people who are courageous, and confident in themselves, right? To stand up truly for what they believe in and not fall to prey being a bystander, because then you have multiple people who
take their shot.
Yeah, and this validates what I say is that a person is smart, people are stupid, because when they form in crowds like that, like the individual kind of goes away. The message might be there, which is fine, and you might be part of it, but when things start to deviate, you notice there's a lack of responsibility from, and it's to me, what happened at the Capitol is more hypocritical than a BLM march, because BLM specifically says we don't believe in the system, fuck the system, we are absolutely going to be doing damage and violence if we feel like it. And I just look for the amount of people that aren't doing violence, like, well, you don't obviously believe in that, what the fuck are you doing? As compared to the Capitol one, which is like, we respect our institution, we just want it to change
as long as we win.
Right, as long as we win. But then at the same time, you're like, but now you're doing the same thing you just hated from the BLM people. Like, you're just doing the same fucking thing. Yeah, and the scary bit is I think that Trump deserved the impeachment because of the way that the lay of the land and the law of the land works when it comes to inciting violence. Yes, it is. They didn't want to impeach him. Like, if you understood politics, like, that was such a pain in the ass for them that they didn't want to do, but they had to. And that Republicans even had to. It was crazy.
I mean, that's going to really... I'm interested to see how much impact that has on the Republican Party as a whole. Just the amount of people, like, where the lines were actually drawn and everything. It's going to be interesting.
It's so needed, and I think the Democrats need it too. If we can impeach a Democratic president, that'd be great, because both
legitimately full on.
Both parties need to shed this fucking 50-year-old mentality off themselves.
Oh, it really is. It's the career politician stuff.
Wake up. The
only way to do that is to impose, I think, term limits. It forces. I'm going to kind of change the quote a little bit. Like the blood, like what is it? The tree of liberty has to be often refreshed by the blood of tyrants. I know that's way out of context from Jefferson, but the blood of tyrants can also be those people who sit there in office for 50 years too.
Yes,
and that's pretty tyrannical behavior.
I think that applies.
Suckers.
I think that applies more to our internal practices than our external practices. So I would say the other side is true. I think.
Well, I would think a good question for that though is like, or a good point on why we wouldn't is, who draws the line on when it's too long? Like, a good president may be perfect suited for 4 terms, or, maybe most presidents are only good for 1, or like. Well, how many terms is right? And you get into that discussion, and I just don't think that the country's old enough to have had that discussion. And that's the discussion that's being forced.
Old enough to have that discussion.
Term limits are being discussed right now. Like, Cruz is like one of the only people that really kind of brought that forward, which I thought was really neat. But then at the same time, there's this interesting argument about having short-term limits. Short-term limits could affect it to politics being more corrupt, because of the fact that people can get in there, get their agenda done with the right practices, knowing that they don't have culpability, and get the fuck out real quick. So, and lobbying has another play in there too. So it's interesting to see how term limits actually need to be kind of harmonized properly. So Cruz has a plan to harmonize those term limits, but me personally, I don't see any benefit in having lifelong senators. I don't get that. So
allow me maybe to propose this, right? And this is I think a proposal, and only a proposal. So at some level, you need continuity of government. Right? You need continuity as things change and as things move from phase to phase. The Supreme Court is really good at continuity because they're elected for life, which removes them from that aspect.
Yeah.
The president, I would say, is a very short-term position. Because in some ways, if you want to really get anything done in this nation, it takes about a decade to do it. So,
nationally,
that being said, Being said, a president sits right there at the cusp with their 2 terms of at 8 total years. I think for me, senators, that way you still have continuity, or not senators, but the House and the Senate still have continuity in those forms of government, in those areas of our government, is to look at the window of 12 to 16 years. That way, they're in between different areas. They are looking at they're part of this again, the cycle, right? And what I'm seeing is the overall cycle, which it looks like it takes about 10 to 20 years for something to happen. That's big in the country. That's a feature of the design. That way, you create buy-in and whatnot. Then you have this period that's kind of in between life and between years, but it also allows for enough blood, like new blood, to come in to force the next generation into leadership. So I would say 12 to 16 years is a very happy spot where you can have that continuity. Like you can see things to fruition from the Senate and the House perspective, which is where a lot of the will of the people is done anyway.
Yeah, I can't remember Cruz's proposal, but I think it was a 6 and 8 year run, depending on House and Senate. But what's important is to have that conservative mindset of is that you can't get somebody in there with power and then push their agenda through. It's good to have it fall onto the next person, hopefully has a different point of view, and then still feels that that's a good idea regardless of the lines. Yeah. And so I think that having that good short term, whether it's like 4 years, because national programs are the scariest thing to me, right? This one size, it's all bullshit. We have 50 states full of experiments. Let's go have some experiments.
Exactly.
Right. Actually do it. If we're going to do it, do it.
Yeah. But the one size fits all is scary shit, because there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. And the moment that you have a third of the country say, I don't like this one size fits all, you have this revolution. And so if you have this idea that's being carried through multiple people, multiple senators, multiple presidents, then it turns out to naturally be a good idea rather than an agenda. And so I think having that medium between somebody that can get the job done and step away to know that the job will be continued if it's a good idea is where I like it. And the ideas, it really does.
Then what I would also, and maybe this is the ad hoc that I'm just kind of thought of and kind of played around a little bit here, is there's the House is for junior Congress people.
Yeah,
like junior, and what I mean by that is we're probably looking at mid 30s, 40s. Like it's the stepping stone before the Senate.
Yeah, the AOCs.
So like you can. I don't want to say to be a senator you have to have a prereq to be in the House. Like I'm very careful to say that because there's different things there, but maybe there's something to that, right? Because the Senate's the last step before something is approved, and it should be in some regards maybe an experienced person who had maybe 2 terms in the House, for example, maxed that out, or did a term in the House and then did a run for the Senate. So I mean, there's probably something to that.
We'll make that sort of like a. I would kind of liken it, and this is going to sound weird, but let me finish it through. Some militaries that require like 2 years of service, and then at the end you can stay in. But if you stay in, you're staying in for life, which is the standard like 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is. Yeah. But there's no like 5 years, 10 years. It's either your mandatory 2 or your entire life term. That now make it like after 3 terms you can, but you're going to do 6 years or 8 years of Senate.
I wouldn't make it mandatory for Senate. I would say like if you want to run for another political office at this echelon, you're going at the national level. You're not running for the House again. You're not going to be the Speaker of the House for 50 years. I know that's an exaggeration, but Nancy Pelosi's been quite some time. So it forced the idea of forcing new perspectives through our governmental system to kind of propel us forward, better and for worse, is I think a risk that we have to take. And we're lucky, very lucky, George Washington being our first president who set that tradition moving forward of a 2-term president, with I think really FDR being the only one who served 3, and then after that an amendment was created. But FDR is a very special circumstance as well. So
the world was dying.
Pretty much the world was like in trouble. And so that being said, it was definitely
well, and I think it's something to be said that we're also lucky that 3-term was also a good 3-term president and not another, like it wasn't a bad 3, or net. It was
it
wasn't bad overall.
I have to wait and see. Like, unfortunately, history will never give us the other answer to what if FDR ran for a 4th term or something like that. We may be having a very different conversation, but right. Due to the graces of history, and he was a great man, but he did unfortunately died in his 3rd term towards the end of the war.
His wife actually carried up for quite some time until what's his nuts took over and everybody hated him. So I've got this weird thought that is abstract. I'm not so sure. So I've been trying to put my finger on this pulse of like, what is up with these men in power, especially that we dislike. They have this disillusion. Where are they headed? Where are they taking us? And this thought came over my head of like, okay, so I'm 67 years old. I'm a politician. I'm part of a Republican or maybe even Democratic lifestyle. How do I feel about myself as a man and the country, and how are my values as a leading that country? And I saw this disconnect that might be true, and it's completely speculation. I've got no evidence for this whatsoever, but this speculation of like this idea of like, we're not united, we're a man, like you're a man, you have territory, you've got to fight for it. There's this innate tribalism, there's this style of like, like just manlyhood, you know what I'm saying, of just like pure testosterone manlyhood that's there. Right. And we've got to continue being a competitor in whatever angle that we have to compete, rather than this like species of a human and we're all one and let's do what's best for human. Let's take the man woman concept to the side of it, because I feel like that comes from a lot of religious point of views as well. That reflect into our biology, but really it's just an opinion where you see people nowadays are like, we're all equal, we have equality, a woman can do the job, man can do the job, like we need to push that shit aside. But yet I still kind of see that in some of these leaders. It's interesting. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, I guess there's something to that, because I see that as well. And what I would attribute it maybe to, and again this is speculative as well, is there's probably something that deals with our threatened mechanism, right? So, for example, when we're threatened, we tend to think inwardly about us versus the overall arching structure. Very rarely, when someone's threatened, do they see beyond the tribal egoistic instincts that occur. And because of that, I think that a lot of like we're in this we are in a weird transition, because for example, the baby boomers are still in power, but yet like they kind of need to get the hell out of power. They need to stop running for political office. We need to stop electing them, and they're kind of being threatened. And so like you kind of see this egotistical thing. Now, what the source of the threat is, I don't know, but like I would say that it's something about some survival instinct that's occurring there, if that makes any sense.
I think it's similar to it seems like, I would say, humanity, the controllers of the planet are between the ages of about 25 to 50. That's where most of that's where the baby production is happening. That's where, caring for the extremely elderly and the extremely young, like that's the main thing. But all the power sources are run by a generation above. And I think it's just we happen to live at a time where it's ratcheted up, and we're about to see it slingshot back into our generation. And I think what we need to be careful of is not holding on to power into our 80s, 90s, 100s, but be ready to relinquish and get fresh ideas. Like allow the war of ideas to continue.
I agree with that.
Sorry.
I agree with that, and to a point where you have to, what is it, Gen, after the boomers, it's what, Gen X or something like that, whatever that Gen is, where are they at?
Generation X.
And what I would say is, people who are in the baby raising age and stuff like that,
that's me,
don't know if they're like the 25 to 50, or really I would say 25 to 40 are not really in a good position to take on that power or take on that power structure yet, because they need that there is or should be kind of an experience requirement here.
That's why I extended it out to like 50, maybe even 55, because that's
I'm actually lowering it.
Yeah, I would
lower it.
Like in the 40.
Do control.
No,
25 to 40 is what controls the world.
No. I'm saying like when you like 40 is when you have that practical wisdom knowledge.
40 to 50.
You kind of start to realize who you are. You're hopefully by this time raised your kid, or you have you're in a better spot, and there you can then run from office and bring those ideas forward and contribute to the next generation.
Well, it's more prevalent even in studies. So like at age 40, you're still in this learning stage. So the mindset is still in a learning stage. That's really interesting. The brainwave patterns. And then once you hit your 50s and 60s, then you get better in what you know rather than learning new information. And so you have this silver years of like between 50 and 70. They say that like that's usually where your wisdom is being practiced best, and where you're where you can make the best decisions, and so on and so on and so on. The problem is that with a progressive economy that is getting faster and faster at progressing, you need somebody in power that can also be able to learn and be, well, what the fuck is Twitter? Oh shit. Yeah, you should probably tax these data companies because they're selling data, and like some old fucking in Congress is like, what? I don't get it.
But I think that's just an issue due to the revolution that we're going through right now.
Right?
Yeah,
and
which
on the other side
is
of this
a difficult revolution to keep up with.
Yeah, but on the other side of this revolution, like we'll have people will have that ability, and I think yes, the 50s and 70s you're making the better decisions and you're acting out what you know, but you also have to be able to ascend the appropriate structures, like the structures appropriately, and you need to be able to learn for that. That's why I'm thinking it's like around the 40 area.
That's what
that way you can learn, and you're not just stuck in your ways. Like we're not having the abortion argument anymore, for example. Like we've moved beyond that. Yes, we can agree to disagree, but like let's move on. It's a 70s issue.
Yeah, I'm approaching 40, and it's actually prevalent that the best presidents of companies, which I'm president of two of them, is around the age of 40, because what you have is you have a group of wise old men that are behind you, which I do. I've got partners that are older than me and in their 50s, but that's who I rely on for experience. They just don't need to make the decisions because they rely on me to keep up with the times. They don't want to keep up with the times, and I don't see that in government. And to the point where it's like I said, and I use that example of taxing internet companies very literally, because I'm sitting there and I'm watching 2.5 hours on C-SPAN of the top 5 internet companies talking to constituents. All I'm hearing is how their fucking emails don't go out correctly to their supporters. Was like the main topic of like, well, every time I send my constituent a fucking email about how to vote for me, it ends up in their spam folder. So what are you doing about it? Like, that's what they were fucking talking about, dude.
Yeah, no, it's amazingly embarrassing the way they talk about it. Like, what was so frustrating for me coming out of all the Mark Zuckerberg, all the testimonies he was doing and stuff, were all the memes about what he looked like instead of like how bad the questions were.
Yeah,
how poorly understood anything was. It was frustratingly hilarious. Oh,
you could tell. You could tell, like when Bezos was taking those questions and he's just looking at them like Like, you know, he's surrounded by people that are full of smart questions every day and has to handle really difficult challenges. And then he gets a question from a senator like that, and he's like, I just don't agree with your premise, like with what you're saying, but I guess I'll answer it the best way I can. Of just like, that should show you that you're asking the dumbest question, like, and you're on C-SPAN where everybody can fucking plain as day. There's no spin.
Why did you make
part of
the
that
black
too is
box
the
go
fuck.
faster than the white box?
Fuck, man.
Like,
Dude, the questions were so bad. And you're
really,
like,
that's your question? Why
like,
is the white box faster
yeah.
than the black or the whatever it is? Like, that's not.
dude,
We
So-
just did it
so
for a
I'm-
marketing scheme. I don't know. Like,
So I'm not going to discredit what you guys are saying. Like, I agree with you. Like, there's definitely an issue with questions being asked and whatnot, and being in touch with things, and hopefully, maybe term limits might do that. But there's also the I would say that at that age where they are, there is an information overload that is occurring that they can't properly parse out and given enough time and space to manage their schedules. And they're also relying on people to, it turns into the telephone game, right? So like these staffs are actually rather large, like people's staffs, these committees. So it goes through multiple people before it gets to one guy asking the dumb question. It's really a telephone game that's happening, and it's very hard, I think, in many ways to communicate what's going on very clearly. And this is where, in some cases, there's an apparent disconnect. And I don't know how to really overcome that sometimes, other than look at how you're communicating these ideas from person to person to person. And if there's an easier or more standard way to do that.
You know what I'm going to say, James?
Come to Canada.
Skepticism. Do you know what you believe?
I mean, yes, the skepticism can work, but it also depends on that person's framework already. And so, like, for example, if I'm getting some information from person X and like I know that it's gone through Y, Z, and let's just jump to the beginning of the alphabet, A, B, and C, right? I'm so far removed from the actual event, the details are going to become very hard to get through. And if I don't know the right questions to ask, like, I think you can apply skepticism, but you're going to you may run into a few issues.
Yeah, but skepticism, questioning, continuing to question, sorting bullshit from reality. You need to understand if you're going to call yourself a skeptic, how this is done. And that's what I mean, is that as long as people are using those faculties, that is the unifying language. Just like when we're trying to figure out what is going on in reality, and to use reality to our advantage, we use the scientific method, and that is the language, the universal language for that. And math is the universal language for X. And, we have these universal languages. And I think if we did better in the education system to endow people with the solid foundation skepticism, that would be the universal language of understanding, differing points of view, and understanding that you can have conversations, seeking what is actually going on, and the ought as well, from a skeptical standpoint, and everyone's going to be speaking the same language. The people who come in to the room and say, well, I had this vision last night in my dream, and this is how I came to this conclusion. Those are going to be few and far between, because people are going to say, well, a vision in your dream is, I believe that you dreamt this, but that isn't necessarily a doorway to what is to come.
Yeah.
I think the more simple, skepticism at some level works, and I think my simple solution to that would just be to reduce the number of people its hands travel through. Fundamentally speaking, that would reduce the filtering that occurs, because you have a perspective, I have a perspective, everyone has a perspective, and so skepticism can only get you so far. It depends on the questions you have to ask.
Yeah, but skepticism is just is just the mechanism. It doesn't just get you so far. It's just a continuing system. It's like it'll get you to by the least amount of bullshit in your mind as possible. That's the idea. And bullshit meaning not believing things that haven't been demonstrated, and also and then of course when you're looking at the ought, I would hope that people consider people's health and well-being as a barometer, like we do in our laws in the West anyway, to build laws around.
Yeah, so I posted two things in the live Pangburn philosophy, which kind of demonstrate that. So the first one is Hank Johnson. I think Pangburn, you've seen this one where he's talking about them building a military base on Puerto Rico or Guam, and that Guam he's asking if Guam will tip over into the ocean because of the size of the fucking. And then the other one was from White House, which I actually saw live, where he's talking about dark money, and there's a scheme, and he's got this whole presentation, and he's got his time to talk. He can't be interrupted. And it's his presentation about how there's dark money behind the Supreme Court. And it's a fucking conspiracy theory if I ever heard one. It goes on and on. And it's that kind of shit where I'm just like, do you guys like not keep up with the times of like what you, and these questions have gone through their teams.
We piss a lot of resources away just simply due to lack of understanding of what skepticism is, and even people who still try to find ways to resist skepticism and say, oh, well, it's not going to get you this, it's not going to get you that. It's like, yeah, it is. It literally is the open mechanism to evaluate everything as it comes in, and evaluate it based on the is and the ought. And the ought is, of course, engaging with your subjective moral foundation. But at least if you and someone are disagreeing on a moralistic standpoint, skepticism can be the governing mechanism to navigate those conversations, and it ought to be.
Well, it's a great tool when you have a feeling, because you know your feelings can lead to incorrect conclusions.
Sure.
The feeling is true, right? So no one wants to, say that the feeling's not true, but it leads you to incorrect conclusions to where you have to discern from imagination from reality. And I feel like a faith-based mindset gets rid of that system, and it says, well, your feelings are true, so you need to go with your gut. And it's like, no, you don't do that, because your feeling might be an asteroid is coming and we should all drink the Kool-Aid, but really is an asteroid coming. What the fuck is in that Kool-Aid?
Yeah, why do you why do you believe the asteroid is coming? Can you just give us a demonstration? Well, I had a vision. Okay, can you tell us about this vision? Well, I was just I saw Jesus arrive before my eyes, and he appeared, and he told me that it's coming. Oh, well, did this happen? Do you think this happened within your imagination, or did it happen in reality? Oh, it definitely happened in reality. Okay, and how are you verifying that it actually happened in reality? Well, I just believe it did. Okay, well, the method of skepticism has just sorted out that what you have so far is that you just think it did.
I think,
I think so. If you don't mind, Travis, I think so you and I are just approaching. I think you and I are approaching that. Like, I agree with you. Skepticism works, right, at some level. I think what I'm saying.
Wait, why did you say some level though? Because I want to understand.
It's not even the point I want to make, man. Like, because skepticism works because it's an open process by which you can get to the truth quicker, or you can get to the truth.
Or I would say at least sorting bullshit from reality, because sometimes we're not going to know what is true necessarily. Like the scientific method is going to give us the best working models based on the evidence available, but.
So, and what I'm saying is, I think that in many cases, these senators and these congressmen are applying skepticism to these positions, right? Or to something to that effect. They're applying a process to understand it, to get to the truth. Like,
asking questions is good, yeah. If they're doing that.
I guarantee you they're asking questions. They're asking questions to understand. I would give them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing that. The thing with me is I guess the skeptical process for me would say I would want to get rid of as many steps as possible, because those steps are filters that are proven to convolute the message.
Right, but James, as convoluted as the message is, and my point is, giving the individual, it doesn't matter how many ways and systems that idea went through. A person who's practicing skepticism properly isn't going to be able to be convinced or hijacked by something that just simply hasn't been demonstrated.
Yeah, I would say that they don't practice skepticism correctly because of the fact that what they apply their skepticism to is not equal on all grounds. They end up doing just one thing that they feel heavily about, and then being very skeptical about that thing with different standards and measures that they would do something equally to. And so now they're just shifting it and being like, well, I'm going to be more skeptical about this
and
shit.
this is
I don't want Supreme Court, this lady in the fucking Supreme Court. And so you don't apply all the skepticism. It's like, but if it was your person on the Supreme Court, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and this is why this idea, and this is where the proliferation, the education of skepticism went haywire at some point, where people think that skepticism has like levels to it, and it doesn't. Just like the scientific method, you're either doing the scientific method or you're not. So if someone's like catering, engaging in confirmation bias, or catering, giving special pleading to a certain ideology, or coming from a political angle, it's like you're not engaging in skepticism. The point is that it's supposed to escape all of that. But if you have some kind of driving force that is like having you apply more skepticism here and not so much over there, it's like you're not doing it right. That would be the same as going with the scientific method to a problem and applying a little bit of the scientific method here, or a very extreme version of the scientific method here. But there just isn't. There's either the scientific method or there's not.
Yeah, and it ends up becoming an argument from incredulity, which is 99% of the time that happens.
So and as far as I can tell, and you know, I've done my best to read as many authors in history as I can that have talked about skepticism. I've talked about how we come to know what is, and how we come to systems of the ought. And as much as philosophers and thinkers have tried to scoff at skepticism, or even Jordan Peterson, oh, well, nothing's self-evident to the skeptic. It's like, well, and Jordan utters this all the time. It's like, it's not, no one's saying that it's self-evident. It's a continuous mechanism and it doesn't mean the skeptic can't make reasonable inferences. I gave the example when we were last on the air of, you know, your wife comes home with groceries, and she's like, yeah, I just went to the grocery store and I came back. You don't know with 100% certainty that that's what she did, but you have enough information here to reasonably infer that that's what she just did. But if she was to say, and this is skepticism, if she was to say, I went to the grocery store and I had to run to, you know, if you're in Vancouver, to Kelowna, which is four hours away, and then I came back from that Costco, but she had only been gone for an hour, then you have some questioning, some sorting bullshit from reality that needs to be investigated there.
Yeah, and I think that you have three types of reasoning, right? Abductive, deductive, and inductive. Sure. Right? But if you use deductive reasoning with your skepticism is going to lead you to use deductive reasoning.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
That will be what is always true. Right? So if you can get to a deductive argument that says, here's my deductive reasoning, then you're completely honest with what you're saying. Whereas your abductive and inductive is a sidestep of just kind of like relatively true, like could be the case, kind of, sort of, could be the case, most likely the case. We get it. So
well, I like to talk about plausibility. That's
right. But through those three things, like if you don't have skepticism, then you don't have those three things. In my opinion, it just depends on how you practice it to get to those things. And if you get to a deductive argument that you know that leads you to the actual absolute truth, then you've applied skepticism correctly.
Right. And look, I think I can make, and you know, when people say absolute truth and 100% certainty and things like this, and I always bring this up as a caveat that I'm not necessarily sure that we can be 100% certain about anything because of the existence of the matrix hypothesis, because we could be it's possible that we're in a simulation. And I think the reason why I bring that up is not because there's any level of plausibility to that, but what I like to do is try to squash the self-righteousness of the person that finds themselves in a position where they're claiming absolute certainty about something. Because I don't think it's a good way to operate as a thinker, as a philosopher. It's good to have, the 0.0000001% of that certainty reserved for very strange weirdness of the actions of gods or of matrix controllers and things like that. And some people are like, well, why would you do that? It's like, but then you're not certain about anything. And then this really makes the presuppositionalists shit their pants. But for me, it's just a freeing feeling to say, yeah, I don't have to make 100% conviction about anything, and I can just sit in this state of questioning and continuing to question.
Well, I would say that I ground that off some percent, which is not presuppositionalism, which is Descartes, right? Which is I exist, and so. I think that's not a problem, but I think the other side of it just comes from the fact that if you've got to define your reality the best way possible. And I don't think I agree with you, Pangburn, where there's not absolute truth, but I think that there's still a position of it's true at the time, right? It's true. It's like I heard this thing from Neil deGrasse Tyson the other day where he says like Newton's laws break down in between two black holes. Like they just go away. Does it make Newton false? No, it makes Newton true, depending on where you apply his science.
Yeah, and like look, it is true that the Earth revolves around the sun, and people will say, well, science isn't about coming up with truths. Well, in a colloquial way, we will say this thing is true because it's the accepted theoretical model. And people with language, this happens all the time when people get confused when we're talking about in a colloquial way or in a scientific sense. But even scientists, science communicators will say it's true that chimps and humans share a common ancestor, and these are facts. These are things we come to understand about reality. That doesn't mean that there can't be upgrades to these models or new evidence that comes along that really does shake these models loose. But in science, things graduate to the level of theory when the evidence is essentially overwhelming that this description of this phenomenon, this thing that is going on, is solid. It's made solid by the preponderance of evidence to support the theory. So
talking about skepticism.
I just wanted to bring in Gregory Malchuk. I think you might be new to the chat, Gregory. What are you thinking about what you're hearing? If Gregory's there,
you're muted, by the way. So you have to press the unmute button.
Yeah, you just got to hit that unmute button if you have him. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry, I was sort of away from here, but well, I was thinking back to things said earlier. I don't think it is hypocrisy for Republicans to be getting angry about what's going on. The left burning cities to the ground in the past year set a precedent, and I think it's actually hypocritical to try to enforce that precedent on conservatives when it's not at all being enforced against the left. They called their street militias into the streets, set every major metropolitan area of the country on fire, killed several dozen people, did $2.5 billion in property damage, and probably $4 billion in lost productivity.
Which is all wrong, right, Gregory? So why engage in anything resembling that activity?
Well, they didn't. Where was the arson on January 6th?
Well, I didn't. I'm not talking about arson. I'm just saying resembling that activity and just not obeying the law, breaking the law.
Yes. I mean, the founding fathers broke the law.
No, I mean
the founding fathers were domestic terrorists.
Well, what about the point I made where I said if they found that that was so unjust in what they were doing, and then the same actions came from their group, why are they not stopping the small fringe of their group that were doing those things? If you break a window in our Capitol building while many other people stood around, that should show you the mentality that those people don't feel like stopping that.
Because doing that would give credence to this two-tiered system of justice, right? The fact that the die was not cast on January 6th. The die was cast during last year when almost nobody was charged with the rioting.
Well, there's been thousands of arrests and people already convicted. So I mean, it's not like it's unjust in any way. So I mean, it's not like it's unjust in any way. But yet you have very little people going up to the police at the time of the Patriots taking over the Capitol building. Very little people going to the police saying, "Are you guys going to stop this? Like, where's the National Guard? Like, where's more police people? Like, what the hell is going on?" And yet you just had a crowd sitting there watching. And if those people really gave a shit about the anti-Black Lives Matter, anti-Antifa shit, then as far as the destruction and the violence behind it, then those people are all hypocrites. Like, if I was in that crowd and I truly felt that way, which I do, I would have literally grabbed the motherfucker that's breaking a window in my Capitol building. I would have grabbed him, like 100% if I was there. And I don't care who joins me or who doesn't join me, but that's what I don't stand up for.
To me, it's bad faith. It's bad faith. It's anarcho-tyranny. The total chaos on the part of the left, standards ruthlessly enforced on the right wing, and people shouldn't stand for it. Again, to me, the die was cast in 2020, when not only when they did that, but when their leadership ran cover for them. Right? They claimed that rioting wasn't happening at all. They claimed that it was mostly peaceful.
Yeah, this is all whataboutism, though, Gregory.
It's not. It's not, because
it is.
the two-tiered justice system cannot be permitted to stand.
Okay, you can make an argument for a two-tiered justice system. Just don't break the fucking law, though.
It's hypocritical for conservatives to try to force this on their own people, though.
Yeah, but don't break the law.
Dan Bongino was probably one of the only people to point this out.
Yeah, but when all of the rioting is happening with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, which I think are essentially terrorist groups, that's all bad. It's right to call out for law enforcement to be taking care of this. Donald Trump was right to be saying we need to clean this shit up, and these governors aren't taking care of it, and right. But don't go break the fucking law after all that.
Okay, so is that the standard now? The left is going to be permitted to riot. I don't care about standard. Nothing's going to be done, and conservatives will be ruthlessly suppressed.
It's not that nothing was done, Gregory.
That's the end result of giving credence to this system.
People were arrested. People were, and granted...
Oh, there were literally tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people engaged in active arson, looting, mayhem last summer.
Yeah, lots.
Can I interrupt?
Zombie? Yeah.
Well, I kind of agree with both of you, but here's my take. Yeah, people were charged, but not many were actually indicted. Like here in Portland, they released probably,
and that's a problem.
Probably 80% of the people that were arrested for crimes.
Yep. I'm not disagreeing.
And people with guns and felons that have already been convicted being released under the guise of racial injustice.
Yeah. And
look, the fact that they had millions of dollars in these bails and they were releasing people that were being held for a year and a half for sex trafficking, rape, all of these other charges.
Yeah.
They had deep pockets, and they did have all of our local government was on board with what was going on.
Yeah, and that's all shit. People kneeling to support these idiots, that's all shit. But again, it's not monkey see, monkey do. Monkey see them get away with it, then we go do. That's chimp
but you can't.
morality. I agree with that.
You cannot tolerate a two-tiered justice system.
Who's tolerating it?
It's going out. Conservative leadership that's lecturing their own people that this was bad.
Then
don't
have
riot,
a peaceful
don't do this.
protest, Gregory.
Or vote, or go vote for the right people.
Yeah,
Or
peaceful
the
be the
protest.
other millions
the
of
left,
people that
the left
and didn't
riots
march on
and
the
burn
Capitol.
cities
Right.
to the ground, and you know what? They actually get what they want.
That wasn't the left. That
That's
was
not
people.
an argument.
That's not the left. That's not the left. Do you want to call it the left? It's
Right.
not. It's people.
I'm
people
kind of
making
agnostic. I'm agnostic on this whole thing to begin with, because I don't think Trump made true on hardly any of his campaign promises, and I think it's a good thing that he's going.
Yeah,
But
I think
my
that
real
you can
problem is with the conservative intelligentsia, really the popular figures, the talk show hosts, especially like Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. They ran with the stolen election narrative for 2 months. I mean, I guess Trump himself included. And if you believe that the election was stolen, and you believe that all legal recourse has been exhausted, which is basically what happened as of January 6th, the only internally consistent position
Peaceful protest.
is seizing the Capitol.
No. Come on, man. Peaceful protest.
Seriously?
No, that is not internally consistent. If you think that the election was stolen, which these people said for months and months, I don't even necessarily think that's true. I think Trump lost probably on his merits.
Yeah, the evidence shows that Trump just lost.
If you say that, and all your legal recourse has been exhausted,
then
especially
you
in
just
places
lost.
like Pennsylvania, like the attorney general clearly violated state law in Pennsylvania. So there's enough to hang your hat on for the people that want to go this route. And if you believe all the options have been exhausted, the conclusion is that you're living under a tyranny, and revolt is
and
the
that
only
would be
option. I don't
that
believe
would be a
this.
conspiracy.
I don't. Again, I think he lost on his merits, so I don't actually believe this.
Yeah, I
But
know what
it's
you're
just
saying.
Extreme hypocrisy for Hannity to come out the next day and say, "Oh, these people are evil. We condemn everybody. We condemn all this."
I mean, at the end of the day, what you saw, and
Because they're
undoubtedly,
patting themselves on the back as if because they condemn both BLM and the Capitol protest.
the difference is what
But
I
I
saw
see it as hypocrisy.
what I saw at the Capitol will go down in history as nationalism and nothing more.
Ironically, it's probably the closest thing this country has had to a peasants' revolt, and watching people on the left mock it is
I
very
wouldn't call them
entertaining.
peasants. I wouldn't call them peasants at all. I call it nationalists. I call it people that think that they have lost faith in their democratic process and need to now go storm that process and take it back. And that to me is nationalism. And
The
nationalism,
Bolshevik Revolution, seizing the
nationalism
Winter
is fucking-
Palace.
yeah, nationalism is fucking scary. And to see that kind of shit, we have a history of this. We've seen it, and it is not the way to go about changing at that stage of
Well,
time.
if you believe the election was stolen, then it's totally logical.
That's okay for me to believe that. I can believe that. I work with people and I have people closely related to me that believe that, but yet they choose they what they saw happen was not the right way to do it.
Well, then they're either highly emotionally motivated and easily spooked, or they were holding an internally inconsistent position to begin with.
I actually give you a third option. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
What's the
I think
third option?
that even if they believe that the election was rigged or somehow by like people committing fraud, I don't think it was a good idea for them to storm the Capitol because, well, I mean, they wouldn't have accomplished anything, right? Like they were planning to do what, like seize the senators or whatever. Like, you know,
I don't know. I don't think
I
they
think
have
that the
further,
normalization
I mean,
of
it
this
just wasn't very
protesting, man.
well thought through. And
I think-
furthermore,
Yeah.
I think everybody, the people in on this call, and the protesters themselves would do good to read up on the power dynamics in the opening, like literal minutes and hours of a revolution breaking out. Because
Mhm.
What were you saying there, Bruce?
but the other
Well, I
thing
was
is
saying, I
that
Just
think
one
that
sec-
we've-
one sec there, dog. You can go
Unfortunately,
after.
I don't even think it's like that people were thinking through the possibilities or anything like that. I think there have been a number of demonstrations staged by what was considered to be the other side of the aisle. And so this was just a posturing move to show solidarity that got out of control, but the normalizing of these sorts of protests that occurred even in DC, I think that's why people went to this route. The one thing I'll say is I'm sad that people did this over Trump and not other things that should have occurred for many decades. But that's my take. Sorry.
The thing is, right, it's like, even if they think that the election was stolen, right, it would have still been a bad idea, because it sets like a bad precedent, right? Like, ultimately,
the founding fathers believed that the tree of liberty must be watered from time to time with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
It's like taken out of
context, way out of context, right? Like,
right?
I feel like most of the people in here, if they were alive in 1776, they would have been standing outside the armory saying, "Oh, no, this is British ammunition. You got to let them have it."
Yeah, I think there's a point on that.
Don't burn the British ships. Don't dump the tea in the
But
ocean.
look,
I agree with you on that. That's a good point.
No, but that's not a good point, actually, because think about this, right? They went through all the courts, right? If you actually read the court cases themselves, right, it's pretty obvious that Trump's legal team, right, like, just didn't know what they were doing. He had several.
Well, it doesn't matter, because his followers didn't believe it. They believe it was rigged.
Dog, you go ahead and finish.
And right, the point is, even if the courts were wrong, right, right, if they read the cases, right, and realized that the reason the courts did this wasn't merely because they were like paid off or whatever, right? That could have been the case. But the fact that, like, even if they weren't paid off, legally he couldn't challenge the votes.
Well, that's
right?
that's exactly
that
what
means
I'm
that, like,
saying.
look, next time, like, let's say Biden were to lose, right? The left could just do the exact same thing, right?
There won't be a next time. They're going to play the state capture game. They're going to amnesty 13 million people, undocumented Democrats, and it's going to be a one-party state from now until the sun burns out.
Who's they? Because a conspiracy only works if there's less than 5 actors, according to history. So anytime there's more than 5, then who's they? Because if it's just a party,
okay, that's a completely arbitrary definition. The Democratic Party has openly said that they have no intention of winning back the working class of America. They had the Blue State Project and the Bobby Kennedy Project, and they concluded, no, these people are just not amenable to democratic ideals, or which alone have changed quite a bit. But no, they're going to import a new electorate. I think the Sean Hannity types, they were right about one thing, and one thing only, which is that there will be no free or fair elections in the future if this precedent stands.
What was
I don't know what you mean by
what was
free and
unfree?
fair.
Yeah, what was unfree or unfair about this election?
Well, I mean, his supporters believe it was rigged. I don't necessarily believe it was rigged.
So there's
but
no demonstration.
By 2024, they will have amnestied 13 million people, and they'll all be voting in U.S. elections.
So
what do you mean by
But one second, dog. But you said Hannity was right about saying that there won't be a fair and free, but that hasn't been demonstrated that it wasn't fair. As far as I can tell by the evidence.
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about going forward. I'm not even necessarily talking about 2020.
Oh, okay.
He thinks 2020 is included in it. I really don't.
But why does he think that future elections are going to be unfair?
He probably has some vague notions of fraud going on. That's not
right. But I mean, the reason why I'm asking and pressing a little bit is because you mentioned that you thought he was right.
His statement may have been true, but his underlying logic was not firm.
Yeah, it sounds like an unsubstantiated fear-mongering weird thing to me. If there is no evidence that there was unfairness, because I mean, honestly, I've looked at the evidence. There's evidence that maybe a few idiots were doing some weird, sketchy things, but all in all, it's like Biden destroyed Trump. It's like Trump lost.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and also, I mean, this is in line with previous predictions. I mean,
well, it couldn't have happened without mail-in voting, and the only way that could have happened is through COVID.
I think
that could have
Biden
happened.
probably.
I mean,
Is it
yet another
playing
thing
a
that Trump
disease
did
on our
wrong. If
shores?
Trump had just put on a damn mask and even paid lip service to the
No, I don't
COVID
see
thing,
that
he
at
would have
all. I
made
think
suburban white women a lot
no way.
happier.
That wasn't enough.
I agree. I actually agree with you, Gregory. I think Trump did it to himself with talking
his
out his
actions
ass
wouldn't
about
have even had to
something that's
change.
obviously going to result in a lot of deaths in the elderly. Talking out your asshole. I mean, we almost have as many elderly dead in the United States as died in World War II.
Remember when March he said that it'll be over in May, and now we're in January of the next year, and it's still not over.
Well,
what an idiot!
I mean, over is kind of a relative term. So old people die. It's very unfortunate. I hate to deliver this news, but they die, and they very frequently die of respiratory infections of all causes, be it influenza, bacterial pneumonia, rhinoviruses. 20% of the cold viruses are coronaviruses.
That's right.
Yes.
So
that's all true.
What is going on now in this country is actually not even as severe as the flu seasons of 1957, 58, 59, 68, and 69.
How many did they kill?
During the Asian flu and the Hong Kong flu, respectively.
Right. And just remember, we're not through this pandemic yet, right? And, we're already at World War II numbers for death. And even if you want to be conspiratorial, just one sec. And
what does that have to do with anything? Why compare it to World War II? Why not compare it to anything else?
Well, no, I
think
because World War II
because
World War II is something that people remember and know.
It's a sensational thing to compare to.
That's the point, right?
That is my point.
It's the death. It's not sensational to just draw a statistical reality to that. Like it's a pretty shock.
But it's sensational because it's a sensational event, right?
No,
it's not
because you want people
unwarranted
to be upset.
No, that's not why you would point that out.
Well, yeah, because it's a pretty bad pandemic,
I
right?
could start looking at the deaths of motor vehicle accidents and start comparing it to that, and we'd be in a different
what
scenario.
I'm getting at, is that the current pandemic is not at all unprecedented. Like our ancestors did not. I mean, our grandparents, they did not panic in 57 or 69. There's another element to this. This pandemic was in part, or at least the damage from it was politically motivated.
Yeah,
right? Coronavirus did not shut down your business. It was the government that came and shut down your business.
Yeah, no one said that
the
virus itself
economy.
shut down your business. Like, who are you arguing against? No one's saying that.
He's arguing against policy.
Yeah, but the thing is,
making the comparison to World War II means you're somehow making a comparison that we're doing something wrong here.
Nope.
Then what is the point of the comparison?
That's an inference you need not take from that. It's
what
just
is
a sheer number. It's a sheer number because
people worship World War II.
Do you know what it is, Bruce? It's because there are still idiots out there running around saying this thing isn't that bad. It doesn't kill. For the elderly, it is very bad.
It does.
It's not just for the elderly.
Yeah, but the elderly is here's the point I'm making.
Well,
sorry,
the elderly sent the young to
just let Bruce go first, and then we'll.
I want to respond. The people dying in World War II are the young soldiers, by and large.
Yeah,
and young people that were killed and mass murdered. If you consider the Jewish Holocaust in World War II, that comparison is not the same. We're talking about people who are compromised otherwise and dying from an issue that would likely occur in lots of flu issues. So like the comparison, like I said again,
only in some cases,
is sensational in that way because you're not watching people die that are in mass at the prime of their peak physical condition of young men.
Well, and I would
so it's not a fair comparison that way.
We're trading the few remaining. We're trading the many remaining life years of young people for the few remaining life years of old people.
In a war.
I've had some fairly lucid conversations with older people about this, and many of them have said, I don't have to eat with my family.
Yeah, I think
so. Gregory, do
you? It's interesting. People of both. Old people in general tend to be very. I've found anyway, resigned to their mortality. And studies bear it out. Old people do not obsess about their mortality.
They don't obsess about it, but
statistically happier and other age groups.
Yeah, but people want to live longer, right? So they can spend more time with their grandchildren. An investment of staying away from your germ-filled kids during a pandemic is a good idea.
But for old people, we've been under a lockdown now for almost a year,
which is a mistake.
But for older people, 1 year could be 10% of their remaining life years, 20, 50, 100. It could be 100% of their remaining life years.
Yeah, you're
which
talking
is
about
what you say
possibility.
For other people that have died in the past year. Well, I mean, the marginal risk of death of all causes increases exponentially after 30.
If I could chime in, I think that we need to be understanding, and to Bruce's point too, it's when you have something like we're used to hurricanes, right? And then hurricanes come ashore, and then finally this fucking thing called Katrina hits, and we're like, what the fuck was that about? Well, we can blame the infrastructure, we can blame FEMA, we can blame our exit strategy, but the point is that when things happen that are unprecedented, then we shouldn't blame anybody or anything. We should just simply learn from them. And I agree with you, Pangburn, that we are locked down too far, and maybe the solution was worse than the actual threat itself. But the only cool thing that I want to see, the only thing I want to see is unity.
No sitting president could survive. No sitting president could ever survive the reduction in standard of living that happened.
I agree with that.
And
very well point.
This is why there's a problem in medicine, and it's a very, very, it seems simple and not too big of a deal, but it's insidious and nasty. And it's this idea on a global scale. And it sounds simple. People like Sam Harris, people like great thinkers were saying this to begin with. Let's err on the side of caution, folks. It sounds pretty, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It sounds really pretty and non-invasive, but it's not. It's a big fucking mistake.
Well, dude, this is what I'm saying about the sensational comparison to World War II leads to these sorts of, oh yeah, this is bad, like World War II.
Like on the whole World War II thing.
No, I'm talking about the messaging, dude. What are you? Why are you such an autistic person? I'm talking about the messaging. Okay.
Yeah, but the point of the messaging was that it was a very
and now you're stuck in lockdown because of these sensational messaging. Things like 9/11 a day. We're having a 9/11 a day. We're having a World War II record. Come on, folks. People are dying all the time. Okay, we have a problem with the flu. Let's please open up businesses so that the last 5 years of these people's lives aren't stuck in a home eating DoorDash.
Hold on. But you could say, like I want to open up businesses, but still take COVID precautions.
Yeah,
right?
They're not though.
So here's the
they're not though.
I have been wearing a mask since last January when I've been when a gaggle of liberal women mocked me in public for wearing.
If it did anything, people everywhere I go, people are mask compliant. We're still having deaths all over the place. Things are locked down again. Case rates are in the air. It's not doing anything.
Yes,
and the sensational ideas around World War II. I understand what you're saying from a practical standpoint, Pangburn, and this is why you're not elected, because you're not playing politics enough. But if you wanted to make people feel good, you wouldn't make comparisons to World War II.
Yeah, but it's not always, Bruce, about making people feel good. Sometimes
I know that's why you're not in politics.
Sometimes I agree, but sometimes the statistical realities of where we're at in a certain situation, I find it interesting, and I find them to be interesting talking points for the exact reasons we're seeing right now. You have a problem with the comparison because you see this, you kind of see a bit of a ageist imbalance within the two things, which is correct. And that by making this comparison, though, I don't think you should infer that I am trying to say that there is any equivalency outside of the sheer numbers.
Well, yeah, I understand, but that's not how it's taken by the public at large.
I know,
and that's why you would have such
point
things bringing into lockdown. You see what I'm saying?
Right, and that's the point.
Well, you're sharing it in your intellectual way. Other people are using it for their agenda of pushing their virtue.
I know, and that's
you see,
and I agree. And look, I've said this from the beginning, guys. Literally quarantining, real quarantine, lockdown of vulnerable people should have happened right away. And let me tell you, I think we would have hundreds of thousands of people still living elderly people still living
In what
the United
capacity, though?
States. In the capacity of being completely fucking locked away from the rest of operating society to keep the economy running and to not drive, big global pockets, deep dive into depression. And I think if we would have focused more,
145 million people in the third world are going to enter a state of starvation because of these lockdowns.
Look, all of these things are need to be looked at, and we need to learn from this. But I'm telling you, it comes from this simple little thing of err on the side of caution. Like it's no big fucking deal. Like humanity.
The worst thing I've ever heard. You know, the worst thing I've ever heard when it comes to changing regimes for your safety.
Yeah, of course. But that's what the left is all about. Please keep me safe, daddy government. And the right does that too, but they're doing it via like war or Christianity, and everyone's losing their ass on this. Yeah. Everyone, right and left, you're losing your ass. No freedom and no safety. You get neither one. You've got neither. You've got neither.
It's a perpetual state of fear, but you don't see people coming out and be like, hey, this really sucks. We get it, but we're way better than where we were when it came to the Spanish flu.
There's no way, dude.
Like nobody stands up and says like, hey, but we're okay. Like we're going to be fine. And if you think that we're not fine, then you're a fucking idiot. And I'll challenge that idea any day of the week. Instead, it's fear.
Dude, I want to have these conversations with you, Grim, in person, bro, not here. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy town. Like, I should be able to, next door, I can have these conversations with people. And we can make inroads in policy, in life, in all other sorts of required relations between people to make change happen. But instead, we have this rioting, burning, stupid insurrection attempts for shit reasons. And now we're talking to people on Discord because we're in lockdown in a state of fear.
Well, now we are too.
I mean, not...
Well, the other big problem is both sides politicized it heavily, and that didn't help anything.
That's natural though, because politics.
That's gonna happen. But
politics is taking advantage of a situation, right?
But Metal should have been able to avoid that.
Yeah, Metal,
you really tried it too hard.
Yeah, Metal, you bring up a good point. Like, and I think the attitude of people are going to do that. I think you're just making an odd claim of, a greater claim of human beings should understand, the is and the ought, and not allow political extremism or any kind of social extremism to come in and hijack your thinking.
That's the problem. Like I know it would be politicized, but it shouldn't have had this much of an effect on it.
Yeah, James.
Go ahead. Sorry, I've been taking up the mic.
Yeah, James, go ahead, and then Metal, if you have a response after.
I just want to say skepticism.
Yeah, man. Skepticism.
That needs to be taught
what you
to people. That needs to be taught in schools.
Shit.
Before people start learning how to do that. That needs to be hammered into the kids when they're young.
Well, I sound like a broken record, but it literally
is in some ways.
It just is. No. Yeah, the broken record of questioning and continuing to question.
You know where I learned. System, it doesn't teach you how to think. It teaches you how to do things.
Well, I'll say two things. I'll say two things. Where I learned my best skepticism ethics class, one of the greatest things I've ever heard come out of my teacher is we were reading a book on the perfect society, and he basically said this. He said, there's been many novels just like this novel about the perfect society. If anything has been taught is that there is no perfect society. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then the other side of it is, have you guys seen the 1776 papers that came out on Martin Luther King Day, which was Trump's last order?
What was that?
No, I've been basically politically MIA. I'm not interested right now. What happened?
It's basically a group that he formed back in September, and it is a scholastic program.
Who formed it?
Trump administration formed it, and Biden wants to get rid of it first day in office. But it's basically it reteaches history about how our founding fathers came to be, and many other teachings.
Challenge to the 1619 Project. Yeah, they're both retarded.
Yeah, they're both retarded. So I was like, well, this 1776 thing just
they weren't going to teach our kids to hate themselves.
Yeah, right. They've already listen, man. My kids.
We keep having these groups trying to politicize history now. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, it is politicized.
I know.
Well, I
like,
find it interesting that the Japanese don't teach about Unit 731. They don't teach that
Gregory,
people were
go ahead.
There could be a
dissecting
neutral party going,
prisoners
telling
of
them
war.
both, like, no, slap this shit down. Like, both of you are wrong. Get out of here. This is what the history is, and that's how it is.
No country's going to survive where you teach the kids to hate themselves.
No, it's not how. That's not conducive.
Or you teach, or you drive this idea into their head that there are all of these evil people out there that are going to hate them because of the color of their skin. It just, it's a terrible, terrible doctrine of that perpetuates
or your
irrational hate.
Your entire group is a victim.
Isn't this what like this is in
Yes,
this
but
what
this is
the
being
arguments
preached by the
against
government.
postmodernism are saying? Like they're saying they're just smuggling in these identity politics to create the hierarchy struggle conversation because the economic one fell on its face in the countries that tried this.
I don't know if it's really postmodernism or it's just a rabid ideology that just got out of control.
I think all it is, Bruce, is I think it's, I think postmodernists are well, let's just say I think people misinterpret statistics. I think it's as simple as this. Like, and this is why I spent so much time when all the rioting was going
but
mad.
the lens by which they're viewing and misinterpreting the statistics. So misinterpretation of statistics is going to occur because of political, intellectual, and otherwise nefarious means, but even innocent means. The lens by which they view the statistics and misinterpret them is what we're talking about. And you can read Stephen Hicks. Jordan Peterson talks about it. He quotes Stephen Hicks all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, this sort of thing is like the Rousseau, the Foucault, like that fell, right? In as far as the economics are concerned, because the bourgeoisie we're doing so well. They're like, well, now we're great. Like, look, we're not in poverty, we're dirt poor. We can't blame the proletariat forever. Well, okay. Well, we have this ideology has taken a new form in identity politics based in race or culture or creed.
Yeah. It's if someone is operating with an understanding of what their moral foundation is, where they get their morality, what their morality is, understanding the law of the land, and your skeptical foundation comes in and interlocks with that, you will never have someone resisting police arrest. You will never have someone going out and burning down a business for a political reason. You will never have someone going out and shooting another person because you want their wallet. It's like,
well, that's utopianistic thinking.
I mean,
never, but you'll have it.
Yeah, I'm saying never in the colloquial sense, like hardly ever.
But what's interesting is that on scale itself is getting smaller, so therefore you are doing something right.
That's right. You're not seeing, like, by and large, even if I went to South Baltimore right now or West Baltimore, I live in Maryland, I'm not going to be that concerned because I'm not engaging in the groups in the society where that death occurs. I mean, it's rare that you're pickpocketed or assaulted as a random decent, dude on the street nowadays. In other countries, that's not the case. The violence that's occurring in these places is brutal, but it's not happening to people that are just walking by.
Yeah, if you were here 100 years ago, then what your modern day society looks utopian already.
Yeah, no, guys, trust me.
We're splitting
all you
hairs
have to
now.
do to understand this in more detail is read Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. But we are, we're doing great. And skepticism's on the rise, even though you hear a lot from QAnon and radical weirdness on social media. But if you step outside of social media for a while and meditate on the actual evidence, not using social media as a barometer for what's going on in humanity, but thinking about the actual evidence and looking at the actual statistical realities of humanity, we're doing very well, and we're doing very well rapidly. But that doesn't mean there aren't some things that have to be sorted out. And I think starting with education reform in a lot of countries is really important,
especially here in America. Education reform is a big necessary right
it's
now.
It's honestly, it's going to take a huge push from the intellectual philosophical community to fight to have this reform.
No, it's going to take push from blue collar people who want.
No, we can see what happened of education.
The
Giving
intellectual
it
is
over
not,
to the
not
state.
the majority of this country.
Giving it
Majority
over
of
to
this
the
country
state.
is blue collar people.
The large portion of education is happening from the state.
Yeah.
Now,
It's bad.
not it
It's
didn't
bad.
used to be the case.
And it's bad. It's terrible.
Right.
Yeah. So
we're switching all of our kids to homeschool.
Yeah, we did that.
Failed system, and it's actually our state in general is taking money away from homeschool programs and giving them back to public schools, which has been a mass fucking exodus because people do not like the teachings of public school. And it had nothing to do with the pandemic. It had to do with the fact that it had to do with comprehension of our kids coming out that couldn't even like get to college classes because they're too fucking stupid.
There is an educational enlightenment coming, and
Yay.
I hope
the internet will help.
Yeah, of course.
I hope
does.
so.
But also being in social learning situations is good for children too.
Yeah, which is where sports come in, right?
Yeah. And
go online and go play hockey in Canada. In the afternoons like that. You're at school, you're online, you're talking, you go into hockey, you're beating the shit out of each other and then goofing and laughing.
Yeah.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and look,
you have the ability if we truly apply a market strategy. Me as a parent with the ability to choose the teacher that my kids could use online is going to be choosing the best that I could afford. Not like the shit teacher that the education is propping up with our tax dollars because they're afraid to can them.
You'd love to have my math teacher when I was in high school. He was so fucking terrible. It got so bad that he would, since he couldn't get control of the class, he would just hand out like sheets of paper that did simple math problems, and you would color and fill them out, and he'd give kids like $5 who got to finish it first. His teaching was so bad that when a teacher from college came in to teach a math class, he noticed none of the kids knew anything that came from his class, knew anything what math they needed to know at high school at the time. He was like distraught. He was a teacher I liked. He teach other classes, but when he got to math class, he was just pissed. He was like furious, and I agree with him. Like, yeah, my math teacher should not have been doing this shit and should not have been getting off scot-free talking about movies with me.
Dude,
and not doing his fucking job.
Do you want to hear something crazy kind of related to that, which is kind of fundamental of why I think now that kids are at home with public schools now, where like parents are starting to hear what comes out of these teachers' fucking mouths. And one of the first days, my daughter, she's a freshman in high school, and so she's hearing coming from this teacher's mouth, and I'm just walking by, and he goes, and he's teaching a math problem. He's teaching a math problem, mind you, and he says this. Why do you go to why is a movie entertaining? And kids are like trying to like form an answer. It's really weird. He goes, nope, sex and violence. And so this is sex and violence. And he starts doing a math problem. And I just look at my daughter and I go, that was completely inappropriate. There's many other reasons.
Hold on.
There's many other reasons to watch a movie. It could be for the story, the plot line. It could be some entertainment. It has nothing to do with sex and violence. Please don't listen to that kind of stuff. And it's just shit like that I'm hearing, and I'm just like, this is different. And on the other flip note, we did more traveling because I can do my job anywhere in the world. We did more traveling and experiences and all sorts of stuff with my family, including my daughter learning from at home, quote unquote, while she's on the road while we're doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she has fucking straight A's. Like there is no problem, no issues whatsoever. She got way more social interaction, I think, and better social interaction, more quality social interaction.
I would have to butt in on it because I grew up with homeschooling at one point, and it was not good for me because my parents, my parents weren't teachers, and they didn't want to teach.
My wife's a teacher, and so the homeschooling for us, and I went to college for music ed. So
I do as long as the kid is getting that social experience with other kids,
that's what I wanted.
That is very, very important.
It's actually easier, dude. I mean, it's easier because you can do it on your own terms.
Yeah, I think that is actually the way current education system is, which I think is just if I was to rewrite it, holy crap, man, would it be different? But
less homework.
But currently, right now, I think the social interaction really is the key learning, the key thing to take away for kids, to bring into
the real social interaction, not online.
Yeah.
You got to challenge your mind in the classroom and challenge your fucking social skills and fucking.
Well, when I was in high
Playground.
school, I mean,
Yeah.
the big problem with that is we were socializing too much and not paying attention to like what the classes. and shit.
Socializing, but
And you
not
did have
like.
teachers
I
that
don't
were
think-
doing their job, but it's just some kids
What'd you
just
say,
didn't want
dog?
to learn.
Yeah, dog. What
Well,
were
the
you saying?
thing is, I don't think, like, from my experience in high school, I had like a very mixed bag of teachers. My math teachers were notoriously bad, but like my other teachers, humanities teachers, were notoriously good. But I think that's just because my high school was more humanities focused. I think, well, the issue a lot of the times is that the curriculum like became worse over time, and it sort of binds
The
hands of
curriculum is
teachers.
just wrong. It's just
Well, the
blatantly,
idea-
demonstrably wrong.
Well, the idea with the curriculum, with the Common Core, was that it was supposed to teach kids like critical thinking skills due to
It doesn't.
well, one second. Well, because like a lot of states were lagging in that area. Like the reason why they do math really weird was to teach kids like the concept, even though like the heuristics generally applied would be just as like useful in terms of solving the problem. Like that's why they want you to like explain the like why 2 + 2 = 4 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think the way it was like done, the way in practice, like I don't think it was done well because there were a lot of states that had even better curriculums. Like New York, I think had a pretty decent curriculum prior to Common Core. It probably could have used improvements, but I personally think that it had good intentions, but I don't think it was done well at all. I think it probably could have been done a lot better had they had. And I also think in terms of like choosing teachers, this kind of stuff, I think that's just going to be like a state level thing. It has nothing to do with the federal government. That's a teachers
Well, it's
union.
typically state level, but they get their marching orders from the feds and also funding. So
Well, yeah,
there's a
they
lot
get
of that.
funding from the feds, but I don't think the feds are telling them,
Standards.
"Well, keep your teachers, no matter how bad they are." Like I don't think. I think that what the feds are responsible for is enforcing Common Core, and I think that's the
usually
biggest
how
problem.
that's usually how most states work. So if you're a government employee, most of them work off the strategy that they will give you a more meaning job rather than fire you.
Right. A lot of times. I mean, just think about like, here's the way I see it. Like, look at almost any government entity, state or fed, that's poorly run. Like the DMV all the way up to, the Smithsonian. The only reason the Smithsonian does well is because it sells itself. But like education, it's a waste of money, time. Also, it's babysitting. I mean, let's be honest. There's a two income requirement household for a lot of people because their lifestyle won't diminish. They won't want to live like people did at the turn of the century. So they're going to live like they want to live now. Requires 2 incomes. They got to have babysitting. There you go. Now COVID let people say, hey, wait a second. We can work from home, which is good, but also we could go to 1 income. And I know a lot of people that have done this. And your priorities adjust. And then you find joy in your children, rearing those children, and less joy in materialism. And I think that's really a good place to be.
I think if your model is focused away from the family unit, how to educate and make sure that your family unit is strong, educate the worldview from your kids within that family unit, then your model fucking sucks. And that's what I find the school system creating is that model in our 1950s style school system is terrible. So we look at European models. That's the most successful model out there, and that's what we're trying to do.
It works on a small level, not a large level.
Yeah, it's like fact teaching. Like, holy crap, man! I look at some of these curriculums, and then they think they come up with they teach this lesson an hour long of facts, and make sure you're taking notes, kids. And then at the end, they ask this what they think to be a profound, thought-provoking question, but they haven't taught the kids how to think yet. So how are they? So how are they to think properly about this abstract concept that takes creativity when all you've done is taught them this list of facts? Fuck.
We call it learning.
Well, you also have to sort of realize that there's like, not everyone has the capacity to be creative.
Yes.
And not everyone has the capacity to work hard. So that is hard, and that's very rare. And so rote memorization works. You know what I mean? But as those menial jobs go away, You know, it's hard to get a job if you don't think critically. You know, then we have a problem to deal with. But that's a different discussion. But
right,
as far as the president's concerned, that's like so far down the line as far as concerns. Like, here's for instance, if you're more concerned with what what the policy is of the Secretary of Education when they're discussing their bullshit propaganda on CNN versus what your child is learning every day, you got a problem.
You need to actually go at the throat of the curriculum. Like
Right.
people are like, I'm going to use my vote to get better education for my kids next year. Are you retarded? Like,
Yes,
that's
they
not like that's not the way it works.
Wow.
Well, no,
I think
it
they
all
should
has to be done
probably
from
have.
the state level. This is what they should be doing.
But it's
Trying
not
to
only
get
just like
education
voting at the state level. It's like you actually have to lobby and go after the curriculum. Like get thinkers, and this is why I'm saying that I'm calling on thinkers, philosophers, to come out and actually be active, not just sit around with your thumb up your ass talking about the is and the ought, but actually get active in writing new programs and presenting them, and making strong arguments as to why they should be adopted.
I agree with that. And the other side of it is that we voted with our dollar because our kid in that seat equals the dollar. So we took our kid out of that seat.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's how it should work, man.
I was going to say,
part of the problem with the American education system, I think, has to do with some weird overtones of egalitarianism. No child left behind. I think my grandfather's best quote was probably, "Leave some of them behind."
Well,
the idea that you're going to educate all of them to
Well,
college
I think
calculus.
I had an idea of what they should try to do.
Germany, they end schooling early and put people into tech programs.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing about that quickly, and then I'll let you guys go.
Dog's up next.
Yeah, Dog's up next. There is a more moral, I think, way to look at this, and it's or to even deliver this message. Like, you don't have to tell a kid, like at kindergarten, just a failure in education example. In kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher told my parents, Travis will never be an artist. And you know, what she meant by that was that like you're not you can't like, he can't draw within the lines, like he can't paint within the lines, like he can't pay attention to what I want him to be paying attention to within the art. But here's what I was really getting at, is that when you get to the high school age and you get these idiotic teachers saying, any of you can be whatever you want, and that's reasonable. It's very romantic idea to suggest that, you know, someone with an IQ of maybe 80 could be a mathematician one day, or even be a creative writer or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just not going to be the case. That
Everyone thinks they're Rain Man.
Yeah, in general, it's just.
Well, that changed, right? Now they say if you just work and achieve it.
Yeah, and look, and I think that's a myth doctrine in itself. Like, somehow that, you know, if you work hard enough, is someone with 80 IQ points is going to be able to compete with the 130, 140 IQ person in the math field. It just doesn't work.
This is the heart of it. People are really weirded out with the idea that intelligence is not something that can be remediated by working harder.
Yeah, people don't like that idea that
calculus class
that all brains aren't like have the same potential.
Well, dude, and well, it goes into like the fear of discussions. Yeah, it's a fear. Well, people don't like the idea that maybe they're born with a different set of abilities.
Right.
Although what's funny about that is being born and identifying with your skin color seems to be totally okay.
Dog,
and that's different off from the get-go, right? So like, we all have different abilities. And there are tall people and short people, smart. The issue is holding people to some unreasonable standard,
right?
And or dumbing it down for the masses of people. And that's what I think we've seen, is dumbing it down for the masses of people so that we get the most community support. And these sort of special interest pieces that you see all over news. It's not even news. It's a special interest piece about some kid that has a club foot in Louisiana and something like, okay, yes, it's terrible. Like, I'm helping people in my community every day, but like, can we please get some news? But no, we have the clubfoot kid on TV, and we have people worried about whether or not the clubfoot kid may or may not make it.
Yeah.
So more money in
May or may not be
education,
an
and
NBA
keep dumbing
basketball
down,
star.
you know, for the rest of our kids, and we'll, you know, make it up.
Another thing,
and then the
We have
Asian
to tell
parents are like,
everybody
fuck
that
that.
club-footed
Do your
kid can
job
be
and
a
your work.
basketball
And the
star.
Asian parents are doing better.
And like up in Canada, there are bugs within the system, like a complete obsession with French as a second language. Like it's something that like all Canadian students need or should want. You know, it's just there are waste like for instance, for most kids, and I can demonstrate this, for most kids that when considering their well-being, learning a musical instrument as opposed to learning French is going to be much more beneficial to them in their life. For most.
Oui.
Some people are going to go into want to be a flight attendant or whatever, and they're going to have to be bilingual. But it's just not except in our education system, it's kind of treated like, well, if you don't have this second language, most universities and colleges aren't even going to take a look at you. And it's like, that couldn't be further from the truth. And it is a myth doctrine that exists in Canada that I would like to see eradicated.
That's bullshit anyway, because if you're paying to go to fucking college, why should they care whether or not you know?
Yeah, it's complete indoctrination, and it was alive and well. I don't know how bad it is now, but it was alive and well in Canada or in Canadian education when I was in high school.
The type of education system I was going to mention that I saw at one point was, instead of teaching everything like the same thing, what we go by is when they get to high school, we go by what the kid is good at and what they are most interested in and what they like the most. And if they're not really good at math, then we don't really focus on math to them. We focus on what they're good at, like history, psychology.
Yeah, you just have to be careful as an educator when you're when you're educating from that perspective, that you don't allow a child's temperament to necessarily dictate.
I understand that.
Because you know it's.
But like you said, some people are going to be good at math and some aren't going to be that great.
That's true, and I think it's a balance of both. Like you don't
that's why
want to
be given tests and stuff. See what.
Yeah, you don't want to be force feeding, you know, a kid with a 90 IQ calculus math over and over again, and wondering why they can't pass it or they're not understanding it.
Yeah, it's just I think it would be a better balance of things, because when I was in school, even if I was got a better math teacher, math was not a thing I was interested in. You know, I was much more interested in art, psychology, history, English.
Bitches.
You know, I wanted to like science.
That's all high school was for me. Women. Yeah. That's all I cared about.
I was too much of a dork for that.
Anyways, guys,
women in some
you guys, please keep going. I'm just going to shut down the YouTube stream, but please keep it going here. I'll be back in a bit if anyone's still around. So, but thank you all for engaging.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep it going, eh?
Keep it going,
God damn it.
All right. Well, that was an awesome discussion. If you guys want to join our Discord discussions, join us on Discord. It's literally one click away. It's all free. But yeah, we have discussions like this every day. So join us. There's the link again in the comment section. The link will be in the description of this video. But these Hangouts will have different topics. We'll have different experts coming in sometimes that work in the field of psychology, science, mechanics, you name it. But yeah, we talk about all kinds of different things, and I'm open to topic suggestions. But anyways, I want to thank you for watching this video. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, but most importantly, hit the notification bell, because YouTube is not really a fan of this channel. And as you can tell, like YouTube just is not showing our subscribers our live streams. If you haven't hit the notification bell, you'll never see them. So anyways, thank you guys so much. Be safe out there. Stop resisting police arrest. Stop committing violence. Stop all this stuff. Don't become a radical social extremist. Sit there and observe, engage in your skeptical foundation, and try to improve how you are recycling the is and the ought, and what's going on around you. So that's my message for today. And as always, let art and science inspire. Join us on Discord. I'd love to hear from you.